Good morning. I'm calling the meeting of the Town of Exeter to order. It is, by my watch, 9:02 a.m. My name is Kate Miller. I'm the moderator. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you, everyone who came here on this bitterly cold day. Maybe some more folks will be joining us as the day warms up. We're going to start with some comments from the chair of our select board, Nico Papakonstantis. Please come forward.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Madam Moderator. Welcome to the deliberative session. I'd like to take just a few moments, if I may, to announce the dedication of this year's annual report. Sadly, last year, the town of Exeter lost a longtime community member, neighbor, friend, and longtime volunteer, Ann Sermon, to whom this year's annual report is dedicated. Ann served on the select board for 2 terms. She also served on the Budget Recommendations Committee and other committees. Upon leaving the select board, Ann immediately was appointed as an alternate to the Zoning Board of Appeals. In 2020, the select board implemented an ad hoc police stakeholders commission to which Ann was appointed and also chaired. In addition to her volunteer work through the town, Ann was very passionate about animals. She and her husband, Tom, loved and took care of many animals of their own, and Ann volunteered for many animal organizations. In addition to her volunteer work, Ann was a passionate baseball fan, and many times before select board meetings, Ann and I would talk passionately about our love of baseball. Ann was always very prepared. She served her community with pride, and she took her role very seriously, always looking out for the best interest of the taxpayers. I had the opportunity and the privilege to work with Ann, and I can honestly say that I believe I'm a better public servant because of what I learned from Ann. It's with honor and pride that we dedicate this year's annual report. We miss Ann, and may her memory be eternal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to go through a few of the ground rules, although most of the people I see in the audience are seasoned veterans of our deliberative sessions, just to make sure everyone remembers what our ground rules are. Only voters are permitted to speak and vote in this session. Others may seek the permission of the meeting to speak. If you come to the microphone, which is in the center of the auditorium this year, please bring your voter card with you. And when you go to vote, just hold it up so we can all see you've got it. When you speak, please give your name and your address in town for the clerk. When you leave the auditorium, please leave your voting cards with the supervisors of the checklist. This town is an SB2 or official ballot town, which means that we have one session, this one, the deliberative session, to meet, discuss, and amend as permitted by law the articles on the warrant, which was prepared, has the proposed budget, and about 30 other articles. Copies of the warrant, the proposed budget, the default budget are available up in the center of the auditorium. I use moderator's rules for my meeting, and those are also available with the supervisors and in the center of the auditorium. We have 33 articles today. I will recognize either a member of the select board, a town department head, the town manager, or the petitioner for our 2 petition warrant articles to present each article. I generally request that the presenters limit their initial presentation to 10 minutes, just for efficiency's sake, although some of the articles, such as the budget and some of the other more complicated articles, may take a little longer. I then ask that folks who then raise questions or speak to the articles limit their time to 3 minutes. If folks are on the stage and wish to speak up, kindly raise your hand, because I can't see too many of you except Andy and Corey, who's taller than Andy. So just let me know if you want to speak. If there is a motion and a second to call the question, in other words, to end the debate and vote on an amendment that's under discussion, I will allow anyone who's lined up at the microphone or folks who've indicated to me from the stage they wish to speak to be able to speak before we vote on the motion to call the question. A motion to call the question requires a 2/3 majority vote. If the motion to call the question passes, then there won't be any more debate on that motion or amendment, and we will vote on it. Please use the microphone to make comments so that everyone can hear, and also because this is being recorded and cablecast. So it's going out through several means, through our Exeter TV channel, which is available on our website, as well as I think there's a YouTube channel, and to cable TV subscribers. In terms of the order of recognizing speakers, I will ask people who have not yet spoken on a particular article to speak before people who've already spoken on that article to speak a second time. I'm asking that folks put any amendment in writing. We have pads of paper down here. Please hand the written amendment to our clerk, Andy Kohler, before you line up at the mic. Okay, so on the table here, I'd like to introduce the people who are with us. Our town clerk, Andy Kohler. Just give a wave when I mention your name. We've got our finance director, Corey Stevens, our town manager, Russell Dean, our town attorney, Walter Mitchell. Beyond that, I can't really see, but we have, okay, good. We've got the chair of our select board, Nico Constantis. We have Vice Chair Molly Cowan. Oh, we have Julie Gilman, Molly Cowan, thank you very much. Nancy Belanger, and Lovey Roundtree Olaf, all select board members. There are a number of folks who are here today to speak on the warrant articles, department heads, some of our consultants and contractors, as well as the town attorney, who may be helpful in explaining the articles. They can't speak without the meeting's petition, so I'm asking whether the voters give permission to the following folks to speak at this meeting, in spite of not being voters. So they are Town Council Walter Mitchell, Parks and Recreation Director Greg Bisson, Police Chief Stefan Poulin, Town Planner David Sharple, Deputy Police Chief Josh McCain, I believe Parks and Rec David Tovey, is that correct? Dan Weeks from Revision Energy, Paul Vlasich from DPW, Tom Page, Underwood Engineers, and Greg Bakos at VHB Concord. Does the meeting give permission to those individuals to speak? All in favor, please say aye and raise your cards. Aye. All opposed, say nay and raise your cards higher. It appears the ayes have it. We're off to a good start. Thank you very much. In addition to the other people who are up on the stage with me, I do want to recognize the members of the Budget Recommendations Committee, because those folks put in a huge amount of time in putting together the town budget and assisting the Board of Selectmen. Robert Kelly is the chair, Elizabeth Canada, Anthony Zwan, Anna Grazier, Andrew Elliott, Judy Rowan, Christine Suter, Eduardo Contreras, Kathy Corson, Christopher Zigmont, and Chris Newport. I'd like to give a round of applause to all those folks. Thank you. After we get done today discussing and possibly amending the items on the warrant, the articles will be printed. Voting day is March 14, 2023. I encourage everyone who's registered to vote to come out on March 14 at the Talbot Gym. I hope it's warmer. Turning to the articles, I'm going to read each article. When we get to the end, there's a petition warrant article that has kind of two parts, an explanation and then a sort of technical ordinance piece. I will skip the technical ordinance piece unless folks would prefer that I read it. The first article on the warrant deals with candidates filling positions. It's not subject to amendment. We will skip that one. The next article, Article 2, is called Zoning Amendment 1. Zoning amendments are not subject to amendment at this meeting, so we can have a discussion on it if folks would like to talk about it. I will move it out of order and have it at the end because we can't vote to make any changes on that. So we'll put Article 2, Voting Amendment 1, at the end of the agenda. Article 3 has to do with the police and fire substation for the amount of $16,300,000. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $16,300,000 for the purpose of design, engineering, and quote, net zero, close quote, construction of a new police station and fire substation on Continental Drive, and to authorize the issuance of not more than $16,300,000 of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and further to authorize the Select Board to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and to determine the rate of interest thereon, and further to authorize the Select Board to apply for, obtain, and accept federal, state, or other aid, if any, including principal forgiveness, which may become available for this project, debt service to be paid from the general fund, estimated tax impact, assuming 20-year bond at 4% interest, 65 per 100,000, 65 cents per 100,000, $65 65 cents per 1,000, $65 per 100,000 of assessed property value. Bond payments would begin approximately 1 year after issuance. A 3/5 ballot vote is required for approval, and this is recommended by the Select Board. Who would like to speak to this article?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. As a result of a public safety analysis that was approved by the town several years ago, one of the results was that the current public safety building is inadequate. There were many concepts that were discussed, and this being one that the Select Board, after many public hearings, felt was worth having the town planner go forward with. There were several public hearings throughout the course of the year, the first of which was held at Town Hall and then subsequently at Select Board meetings. It's important to note that both the Facilities Advisory Committee and the Energy Committee wholeheartedly endorsed this project as it's written. And in fact, we sharpened the pencil at the end to make sure that we had the net zero, funding for the net zero in there at the recommendation of the Energy Committee. To get into the nuts and bolts of the project, Town Planner Dave Sharples will speak to this, but as the moderator indicated, the Select Board did vote 4-0 to recommend this to the voters. Thank you.
This is not.
I see some folks at the microphone. Are you wishing to speak? Yes, Mr. Flockhart.
Doug Flockhart, 7 Jacks Court, formerly known as Park Court. We live on the side of town that's the wrong side of the tracks, otherwise known as the flats. If there's a 100-car freight train, which we sometimes have, the fire engines cannot get to our side of town. We have had a fire in our neighborhood, which was devastating to one of our neighbors. And the inability of the fire engines to get there quickly was impeded by the railroad tracks. Fortunately, it could have been worse, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been. We strongly support this article, not because we're in favor of increasing our taxes, but because our side of the town does not have adequate protection from police and fire because of the railroad and because of the fact that the town is growing on our side, the wrong side of the tracks. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Yes. I recognize the gentleman in the white shirt. Are you wanting to speak? Sorry. Sorry about that. Thank you.
I'm Dave Sharples, the town planner. I was just going to do the presentation public.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Cue it, Andy, please. I think this is a big project, so internally we thought we'd just give a brief presentation on it and how we got here. Just start on the introductions page, please. Next slide. Thank you. As I said, I'm Dave Sharples, town planner. I'll give a brief presentation followed by the police chief, Stefan Poulin, and some words from Eric Wilkin, the fire chief. We also have Bob Robachek here from LaValle Brensinger Architects, who we hired to work with us on this project. He is here and would be available to answer any questions if needed. Next slide, Andy. You can go past presentation outline. Go to the next one, yeah. So just want to briefly go through background. How did we get here? And I am going to go back a few years, but I'll be quick. Back in 2001, the town had conducted a fire infrastructure study by Firescope, Inc., and this study focused on fire response times, examined the need for an additional fire station, and didn't focus on the existing station, but it did recommend a second station to, quote, provide better coverage to the residential area north of Route 101 and still provide coverage for the Epping Road corridor. It also recommended the examination of a third station in the western area of town, and a fire substation did go before the voters in 2003, but it was not voted. Next slide, please. So after that, an organizational effectiveness and efficiency study of the fire department was conducted in 2007. This study was primarily geared towards staffing levels and the examination of a second station yet again after the failed vote and the previous study. And this study also recommended the town acquire enough land in Epping Road to enable the town to construct a second fire station in the future. Next slide, Andy. So after a successful vote in 2008, it went before the voters to purchase land at 6 Continental Drive. It's about a 2-acre piece, and right in the warrant article it says, quote unquote, for public safety purposes. Then fast forward about 10 years, in 2018, the town adopted the updated master plan that included the following 2 action agenda items. One was to resolve the outstanding issues with the Public Safety Department facilities through a comprehensive public safety services evaluation that includes recommendations, and based on the findings of that service evaluation, move with top priority recommendations, identify grants to support final design and construction as well as staffing. And in 2019, as a follow-up to that, the town voted to conduct a Public Safety Department's facility data and staffing analysis. Next page, please. So the staffing analysis mostly focused on staffing, but they did have a section on facilities. They dedicated a part to facilities discussion, and they noted several areas that were lacking in the existing facility for the fire department and the police department. Little to no ADA accommodations, very, reached areas that are reached capacity, as shown in the pictures to the right. And so the study went on to recommend, they didn't dive into it, but they recommended they conduct a space needs assessment for the town to look at each of the operational capacity of each of the police and fire, look at their processes and figure out how much square footage is needed for the programs that you implement right now. Next slide, please. So that was done, and that's where we hired LaValle Brensinger Architects, and we conducted a program and site evaluation. We developed a programmatic needs assessment which identified all the square footage. If you take a use, what is, does it need an office space? Well, how much? Does it need administrative space? Does it need a copier and so forth? So you add up all these square footages and you get to a program of what you need for square footage to provide that service. I'm not going to get into detail on those, but all these documents are provided on our website. Next slide, please. So what's the purpose and the need now? We defined We've defined how we got here, and the purpose was to find a suitable site or sites for our public safety departments. And the need, just to go over some background, the public safety complex was constructed in 1979, about 43 years ago or so. To put that in context, in 1980, the population was about 11,000, and today the population is 16,000, which represents an increase of over 5,000 people, or a 46% increase. So 5,000 more people to serve for public safety. Also in 1979, the police department had 31 employees, fire department had 13, for a total of 44. Today, that total is 72, or an increase of 28 employees, or a 64% increase. So we've added a lot of people in town and quite a few employees since the existing facility was built to accommodate that. So both the police and fire departments have outgrown their current facility. Multiple renovations have been done to the building to accommodate the departments, splitting offices in half, putting, I think, 5 detectives in one space, desks back to back, side to side, and even converting a closet into a kitchen. So for a more in-depth look at the facility, you can go to our website. They got a lot of good documents on there, and they also have a video walkthrough of each of the departments that really show the space and show the needs. So once the purpose and needs were done, we had to look at what options are available to us. The town, the Facilities Advisory Committee, the manager, the assistant manager, the select board, everyone was involved in this process. We looked at several different sites, and we really focused on 4 different sites that the town owned. One is at the existing site, 20 Court Street. Another one was a town-owned parcel off Holland Way. Another one was the 6 Continental Drive that we voted in 2008 and purchased. And we also looked at 3032 Court Street, the site of the existing recreational facility, because that was potentially in transition because they were moving to 10 Hampton Road. We also did look at the feasibility of maybe purchasing property, but once you get into that and purchasing property, why not town-owned if it works, because it'll just add to the cost. So that was looked at, but it was quickly abandoned as not a viable option. So multiple options were examined for each site where feasible. We held multiple forums, held a forum at the Facilities Advisory Committee, we hosted a public forum at the town hall, and we had an open house at the fire station. So through the process, the most desirable option was identified to be a new police station and a fire substation at 6 Continental, and either renovate or raise and build a new main fire station at 20 Court Street. 6 Continental was purchased by the town, and it was large enough to accommodate the new fire and new police department and fire substation. Next slide, please. Once a viable path forward was identified, the chiefs spent considerable time with LaValle Brensinger Architects to refine the space needs to minimize the overall building size while maintaining an adequate layout to support A, a modern facility, and B, with some room to grow in the future if needed. And in consultation with the select board chair, the budget review committee chair, the town manager, the assistant town manager, finance director, all the chiefs, I mean, so many people were involved in this. It was decided to move ahead with the project in 2 phases, with the first phase being a warrant article for 2023 to conduct a new police station and fire substation at 6 Continental. And this is the article we're discussing today. The second phase would be either to renovate the existing facility at 20 Court Street or raise and build a new main fire station. But that is being worked on with the Facilities Advisory Committee, and we'll figure out maybe a recommendation on how to move forward with that and come back when that is ripe for discussion. And finally, so I just wanted to mention, as the chair of the select board mentioned, about sustainability initiatives. There was a strong push to make this building net zero ready, which is basically exceeding all of New Hampshire building energy codes, increased insulation, triple glazed windows, etc., and really just stop short of the actual solar panels themselves or some sort of other renewable energy source that we haven't got to and we will get to during final design. But It will be built with all sustainable materials, low-flow fixtures, LED lights throughout the project, and the Select Board did add to this to cover the cost of that net zero approach. But also, right now, there's a lot of money out there available for energy incentives through the Inflation Reduction Act and other programs. So we will be actively seeking those incentive programs at the appropriate time once we finalize the design and move forward. And with that, I'll pass it off to Chief Poulin.
Thank you. Chief Poulin.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Sharples. I want to quickly reflect back upon the mention in his presentation regarding the allowance and diligence of the town officials to search for and seek the availability of grants attached to this project. If you recall, last year, voters approved spending $220,000 for body camera program at EPD. We since had applied for and received complete funding through congressionally directed spending. Not a dime of taxpayer money had to go towards the cameras. I'd like to give a very special thank you to Senator Shaheen for her continued efforts in supporting New Hampshire law enforcement, and specifically for supporting the town of Exeter in funding this body-worn camera program. Now to the discussion on the current article. We are now at the point of simply having used up all of our available space or lack functional necessities, which are impacting several important high liability areas of policing. These high liability areas affect the personnel of the department as well as the citizens we interact with. They include the ADA issues, stair-only access to interview room, detectives and staff, as well as close and personal interactions with prisoners and civilian staff or visitors. They continue to have concerns regarding confidentiality, regarding informal interviews having to be conducted in a lobby, detective investigative phone calls where everyone can hear what everyone's saying on the phone, inter-office meetings with personnel regarding private issues or performance evaluations. They concern our evidence room and evidence processing issues, growth and changes throughout the years with evidence intake, having to process evidence in other rooms using chemicals, etc., and making sure not to contaminate evidence, and the issues that presents with having to retain more evidence now than we did back in 1979 or the 80s or the 90s. Record storage is maxed out. We are now utilizing some prisoner cells to store our records. Since the 70s, there have been large increases on what we have to keep and the statutory limitations on retention of those records. So that's why these things keep growing. Evidence keeps growing, records keeps growing. Emergency communications, our room is at capacity, there's poor circulation, and vital equipment consisting of large radio consoles are unsupported and are over 20 years old at this point. Police training and development is not where we could be. In the public eye, more than ever, is the need for improved and consistent officer training in every aspect. We do not have the means to achieve this with the current police department. We use off-site sources such as DPW for our simulator and local schools for their gyms. We were unable to host training seminars, which is the largest source of police training available here in New Hampshire. Important to note is a lot of the police training costs money, upwards of $800 a person for these seminars. If we're able to host one in Exeter, they give free slots for the host agency. Part of the 2022 feasibility study included Municipal Resources, or MRI, conducting an independent review of our spatial needs. The MRI report looked at our situation regarding current best practices, recommendations from the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing, and clear accreditation standards. The MRI report's conclusions stated, generally, despite the public-facing professional appearance of external areas of the Exeter Police Facility, observation of the current state of the facility at 20 Court Street reveals that nearly every workspace is overcrowded, whether by personnel or storage of agency-owned property. Security and safety of employees and visitors to the Exeter Police Department is not assured within the current structure. Compliance with imposed regulations and best practices associated with victim witness privacy, juvenile operations, evidence and property storage, records maintenance, and prisoner handling in the current structure is not assured. So today we have arrived at the conceptual level with regards to a layout and cost estimating for a new police department with an attached fire substation at 6 Continental Drive. We've been working diligently to assure the best for the taxpayers while still addressing the aforementioned needs and issues. The new design incorporates a large community conference and meeting room. This will allow for a safe and secure meeting venue and be available for serving to the public. We envision scout meetings, senior meetings, substance abuse help meetings, etc., in addition to hosting seminars and training classes. There will also be an agility room for de-escalation and less lethal tactics training and physical development of our staff, which will also be shared with the fire personnel. In closing, we have had several meetings with different stakeholder committees and town officials to listen to concerns and feedback. Our goal throughout was to arrive at a concept before you in which we can say that we've responsibly made multiple examinations and trimmed any excess while not affecting police or fire operations. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other folks that would like to speak to this article? Oh, I see Mr. Fire Chief coming up. Thank you.
You want to go first? No. Madam Moderator, thank you, town officials and those in attendance. Like the police chief, I'd just like to do a quick statement for those in attendance. Thank you for being here on such a cold morning, and those that are probably going to watch this over the next month before the vote. The fire station, too, is cramped for space. The fire station was built, as said, in 1979. It housed a crew of 3 and 2 chief officers. Over the last 43 years, the fire department has grown from that shift of 3 plus 2 to shifts of 7 plus 4 staff officers. We have firefighters sleeping in closets, and we've given up a quarter of our training and emergency operations center for added bathrooms for multi-facilities. The 6 Continental Drive station will allow the fire department to better serve the residents and businesses on the north and west portions of town. As you heard from the town planner, since 2001, this has been on the radar. I'm the 3rd chief that I know that is kind of carrying the ball forward, hoping to gain traction to serve the town better while meeting some of our space needs challenges. When the first study was commissioned that led us to hiring LBA around 2018, 2019, about 85% of our call volume was concentrated in the downtown core, what many of us call the urban compact. That's a pretty impressive number. That only meant a small fraction of calls that we responded to on the peripherals, so we were able to maintain that. In the 3 years since we read the CPSM study, we've had LBA help us through our process. That number has changed quite dramatically. In 2022, we now only respond to 78% of the calls to the downtown core. We have increased call volume to the outside, and with the ability to look at last year's stats, we see the majority of those calls that are the Epping Road corridor, out right to where we are today, out toward the high school and North Route 101. That's where a lot of the growth has been in single-family houses. It takes us 10 minutes, plus or minus, to get to the Route 9 intersection at Epping Road and 101. Mr. Flockhart could not have said it any better, talking about the delays coming from downtown. Congestion, the Phillips Exeter Academy school zones, the Main Street school zones, the railroad tracks all contribute toward our slow response to this side of town. Anyone can Google a travel time simply by using 20 Court Street and your destination address to see what an actual response under normal traffic conditions would be. However, we routinely see that the blinking yellow light nearly at Mr. Flockhart's home at Winter Street and Epping Road is the 4-minute demarcation from Court Street. If you live further out than the Park Street Common, we are not meeting the recognized benchmark of 4 minutes or less. That's why it's important to have that station. It's not uncommon for a train to delay our response, kind of harping the point. The Down Easter passes through town 11 times, 12 if you count the empty run north at 4 a.m., those that listen to the whistles, and about 2 freights a day. And if you, like me, have ever sat at the crossing while the blinking red lights are on and the arms are down and nothing is happening, you fully understand the delays that we have trying to meet our response times. Continental Drive substation will allow us to have equipment and personnel on both sides of the track, thus minimizing delays. The area along what we call the Epping Road corridor has seen tremendous growth. I've been in this town 18 years, and I've watched a lot of additional growth on that corridor. Buildings raised, new buildings added. I've watched 140 units of living be built at Meeting Place Drive. I've seen 91 units on McKay Drive, 96 units in Ray Farm Drive and Willie Creek, 52 new homes built along Woodbridge Lane off Watson Road, and we've all heard the proposal to build 224 units at what we're going to call the Gateway to Exeter. All of those living units have contributed to creating 20% of our call volume. Today, 1 in 5 calls to the fire department or the ambulance is to the Epping Road corridor, areas north of Route 101. The dynamic is changing. If there was ever a time to consider moving forward to meet our space needs and protecting this side of town, it is now. As was mentioned earlier, we did a space needs assessment. The fire department is currently using a little over 13,000 square feet at our current facility. The space needs assessment said we need a little more than 21,000 square feet. Rough math, about 8,000 square feet difference, so we are cramped for space. This substation that we are proposing in addition to the police station is about 6,800 square feet. It's going to meet some immediate needs. We're going to see immediate relief at the Court Street station by moving personnel and equipment to the substation on Continental Drive. We propose to house one engine, pumper truck, fire truck, capable of initial attack on any type of fire in that north and west piece of town, and one ambulance at the Continental Drive station. Additionally, we'll be able to house utility pickup trucks, a boat with a trailer, and other equipment currently housed outside. It's worth noting here that the town of Exeter owns over $5 million worth of mobile property, some of which is housed outdoors, prematurely deteriorating and increasing our maintenance costs annually. The more of that we can get inside, the better we all will be. Big note here, there will be no new apparatus or equipment needed to be purchased to staff the Continental Drive station when it's opened. Quickly talk about staffing. We've already talked about the 3 firefighters downtown, and Dave Sharples mentioned we had 13 full-time employees in 1979. Augmenting those 13 full-time employees was about 30 call volunteer firefighters. Firefighting in that day was predominantly done, both in the small town and the larger communities, with a volunteer force that was readied when needed. We've transitioned away from that model of 30 or so call volunteer members to a career department that totals 32 uniform members, a full-time office manager, and yes, the health officer is also within the fire department now, but 32 full-time instead of 30 call volunteer. We did not do that because we wanted to. We did that through necessity. Lack of volunteers and increased call volume has forced us to move the model from a volunteer model to a career model. The proposed substation will be staffed by a lieutenant and 2 firefighter EMTs or paramedics. We initially plan a crew of 3. That will leave 4 people downtown. There'll be a captain and 3 firefighter EMTs or paramedics working downtown. There will be at least 1 chief officer assigned to the Continental Drive station, so we'll have what I like to refer to as adult supervision over the firefighters working out of that firehouse. That'll leave 3 chiefs downtown. My office or the chief of department will be downtown along with fire prevention for ease of people to come in and see us as well. So by splitting our current crew of 7 to 3 and 4, it'll allow us to staff both stations, have crews of 3 on an engine, so when we respond out toward the high school or Beach Hill, Watson Road, Oaklands, we'll have a crew that can actually initiate actions and work with the crew of 3. We'll be able to staff the ambulance and get it moving quickly. We'll have the equipment on both sides of the railroad tracks, as stated earlier, and it leaves us a crew of 4 downtown to do the same, cover an engine, the ladder truck, take an ambulance call, whatever the call appropriate. No new staffing will be required to staff the Continental Road station. We're going to use our existing staff. Just a quick note, kind of driving home my point of why this is so important today. When looking back at some call demographics, in 2020, when we really started to wrestle and talk about this whole process, bringing it forward, we responded on 562 calls out to this side of town. In 2021, it grew a small amount to 584. And in this past year, it jumped to 709 calls. That's the graphics that we're looking at. That's what we track as emergency providers to provide you the best service possible. And our goal is to be at your house, at your residence, at your business, within 4 minutes or less of your call, so we can have a meaningful approach to fire attack and suppression and save a life and save your heart and brain if we can on those calls. So help us help you. I look forward to answering any questions and hope to have your support on this worthy project.
Thanks very much, Chief. Yes, please state your name.
Darius Thompson, 15 Drinkwater Road, Exeter.
Thank you.
As a former co-chair of the Citizens Advisory Committee with the Police Department, I want to give hats off to the chief, all the police officers, for all the work that they've incorporated from our recommendations and the support of Ann Sermon as well. I want to say thank you personally, but thank you for everything you've done. Also for the fire department, thank you for everything you do with what you've done. I have sat down and met with the chief as a resident to figure out why this is necessary, and it is plain and simple that we should have done this 20 years ago. I am in full support of this. My only question that I have is the $16,300,000 enough?
Thank you.
I'm Mary Teagle. I'm a newcomer, I'll admit it, 9 Union. And I want to also add to the gratitude for the people who've worked on this project. I don't see a site plan. There might be one. So my comment has to do with providing complete access for what we call alternative modes transportation. It may be in the design. I don't know if this is an amendment or a recommendation, so carry it as it will. As mentioned, there's a tremendous amount of development on the Epping Road corridor, and I've been visiting Exeter for about 25 years. I've seen the change, and I see no new sidewalks. I see no signage. I see business signs blocking visibility for drivers coming and going. So I ask that on the site plan that the access for people on wheelchairs, walkers, bicycles, strollers, you name it, is top-notch. It sets precedent, and I'd like to see that access go from the building all the way out and across the street and extending in either direction. I think it's important, and it's a good opportunity for the town to set an example and to raise the bar on what Epping Road looks like and how it works for all of us. As a newcomer, please forgive me for what I'm about to say. I don't want that street to look and perform like a strip that we see everywhere in the United States. And it's kind of headed that way. So this is a good chance for our town to do it like it ought to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Would any of the folks who presented, perhaps Mr. Sharples, care to speak to the question of where we are in terms of the site plan process and how folks could participate in that?
Sure. We haven't gone to, the article is to fund the construction and the final design. We have a conceptual design, a site design, but we haven't finalized the design. So we're, welcome public input along the way. Regarding sidewalks, I couldn't agree more. Since I've been here, we have plans. We've been looking at the Epping Road. We added a sidewalk on Epping Road from Brentwood Road up to 80 Epping Road or McKay Drive. We added that section just recently. When the TIF Road incorporated sidewalks on Ray Farmstead Road to bring down. We're in development of a design from Cronin Road, which is the state right-of-way by the gas station there, to the lights at Continental. We have a design that includes sidewalks there. The new Nerea Energy on the corner of Continental, we had them incorporate sidewalks, so those are actually in now. So we're working our way. It's not something we can do in one, but potentially, look into, we will continue to look into that, and I continually to work on that sidewalk connection. And then may I just address is it enough money? I just wanted to, can I address that for a second?
Yes.
The earlier question, thank you. Someone said, is it enough? right now, you're in the conceptual design stage. You rely on the best estimates, and there was a high and a low range estimate, and we're confident with that estimate. We hired a professional estimator to come up with these figures, and it included inflation or projected inflation. I tend to agree with their assumptions, so I believe the number should be enough. And if for some reason when you go out to bid, because it is an estimate, you go out to bid and you might get a little higher, I think there's enough room to figure out how do we meet that number. But it won't be at the expense of sustainability. It will be more, maybe looking at different building materials and so forth to try to get within that number. But we're confident we can meet that.
Thank you. And if folks wish to participate more in the process, whom would they contact on that? Would that be you, Mr. Sharples?
Yeah, you can contact me. Yeah, I would be happy, especially the sidewalk piece and the accessibility piece. I would be happy to discuss that.
Super.
So.
Thank you so much. Other speakers? Mr. Clement?
Yes, good. Good morning, Don Clement, 5 Thelma Drive. Actually, I wasn't prepared to speak on this article, but a comment from my good friend, Mr. Thompson, prompted me to come up here. One, I want to say that I think it's very important, it's necessary that we have good public safety facilities in this town. I myself have used the fire emergency services on many occasions, and I got to tell you, they're top notch. I wouldn't want it any other way. There's no question that I think we need those facilities on the other side of town. We're grown. That side of town is larger. We need facilities out there. I would just comment that, and again, I want to commend the facilities committee. They did an unbelievable great job. I mean, they went through everything. I mean, there is nothing that new complex doesn't need or require. My concern is that maybe it's a little too much. Do we need a deck? Do we need a community room? Some of the things are just a little too high. One of the things are too great. One of the things I think that the facilities committee missed is that considering what the cost is to the Exeter town taxpayer. We're talking a little over $16 million. We know we're coming back in a couple of years or so to do either a renovation or a tear down of the Court Street facilities. Are we talking another $4, $5, $6 million there? It's a big burden on the taxpayers of town. I know one of the hot topics has been for a while affordable housing. I know Selectwoman Belanger has been passionate fighting for affordable housing for many, many years. And I'm sure the board is also concerned about affordable housing being an issue, and it is. But think about this. What about affordable housing for those who already live here and own homes? The taxes and the fees are making it very difficult for a lot of people to afford to live here in town. So I think it's important, while we have good quality services, some thoughts ought to be made to what is really affordable, what the town can afford. Let's not go crazy. Let's do what we need to do and not go overboard on that. But other than that, I think we need to have another station on the other side of town, and I will fully support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Darius, do you? Okay, I need a second on that. Okay, could you state your name, please? Chris Zigmont. Okay, so there's been a motion to call the question. This requires a 2/3 vote. All in favor of calling the question, which means we end debate at this point. There is no amendment on the floor, so I'm not sure that we're calling the question in that way, but we would be closing debate on this article. All in favor, please raise your cards. Say aye. Aye. Thank you. Those opposed, raise your cards and say nay. It appears the ayes have it. There will be no changes to this article, and it will appear on the ballot as written. Thank you, everyone who contributed to those very good presentations. The next warrant article is number 4, the West Side Drive area reconstruction, $6,020,000, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $6,020,000 for the purpose of construction of water, sewer, and drainage improvements in the West Side area, and to authorize the issuance of not more than $6,020,000 of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and further to authorize the Select Board to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and to determine the rate of interest thereon, including principal forgiveness, and further to authorize the Select Board to apply for, obtain, and accept federal, state, or other aid, if any, including principal forgiveness, which may become available for this project. The town will receive 20% debt forgiveness from the New Hampshire DES to offset a portion of the cost of this project. Debt service will be paid from the general fund, water fund, and sewer fund. Estimated tax impact, assuming 15-year bond at 4%, is 11.5 cents, is that right, per thousand, or $11.50 per 100,000 of assessed property value. Bond payments would begin approximately 1 year after issuance. A 3/5 ballot vote is required for approval. This was recommended by the Select Board 4-0. Mr. Chair, did you wish to speak to this?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. And we also have the town engineer here for specific questions about the project, but essentially, the Select Board is recommending the continuation of this project. Back in FY20, the town approved funding for the planning and conceptual design. FY22, the town approved funding to actually put together the design. This area has significant sewer inflow and infiltration issues. It has the water main was installed in the mid-'60s. It's worn out its life. We've had 10 major water main breaks in the last 15 years, and continuing with this project would go towards improving the sewer infiltration system as well as reconstructing the road, both of which are desperately needed for this neighborhood.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this article?
Jerry Hamill, 17 Little Pine Lane.
Thank you.
I just had 2 questions on this here. The percentage, the town's going to be paying per percentage, water and sewer. So the 2 questions I have, one of them is, what is the percentage that the town's going to be paying out of the general fund on this project? And the second question is on the debt forgiveness, the 20%, is that going to be going to all 3 phases with water and sewer, or will that be going to just the town?
Okay, let me see who can respond to that. Is there someone who could respond to that question? Thank you, sir.
Paul Velocic, the town engineer. The 20% debt forgiveness is based on the Clean Water SRF state revolving fund, and that covers the storm drain and the sewer issues. And the amount of that 20% would be about $740,000. The SRF amount is $3.7 million, and that would cover the stormwater improvements of 4,100 feet of drain and roadway improvements, the majority of the roadway improvements, which would be 5,700 feet of road, and the remaining portion here would be from the water fund, and that's not included in the 20% debt forgiveness portion. And right now, the estimate for the water portion is $2.32 million.
Did that answer your question, sir? Thank you. Did you want to speak?
Yeah.
Town manager?
Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to break down the percentages of the project again in case it wasn't clear. 40% general fund, 14% sewer, 46% water. Thank you.
Thank you. Does someone else wish to speak?
Doug Flockhart, 7 Jacks Court. I'm not in that neighborhood, but I have concerns because I've just experienced and suffered through similar construction projects in our neighborhood. First of all, I accept as a matter of faith that this project is necessary. The project in the Salem Street, Oak Street, Park Street area was also necessary. All I had to do was look at the pipes, the rusty pipes that were pulled out of the ground, to agree that it was necessary. My concerns are with how construction was done. And I have a concern for the sake of my fellow citizens in this proposed area. It's my understanding that the project in my neighborhood was given to a low bidder and that we did not pre-qualify our bidders, unlike the practice in Portsmouth and Manchester. I am told that the bidder that we had, the constructor that we had in our neighborhood, was not allowed to do work anymore in the town of Portsmouth. That may or may not be true. My concern is, and my question is, first of all, to Mr. Vlasic, is whether or not they will be pre-qualifying bidders for this project. Let me explain why I have concerns. We have serious questions as to the qualifications of the contractor who did the work in our area. Again, my understanding, they're not allowed to work in Portsmouth or Manchester. They have left the scene, and although we expressed our concerns through the town manager to the town engineer, we were assured that everything was going to be messy, but it's going to turn out okay. The word messy was explicitly relayed to us from the town engineer through the town manager. Well, Nagasaki and Hiroshima were messy too. Messy is a convenient term. I can tell you, and also we were reassured that the town engineer's people were on the site 2 days a week. We were on the site 7 days a week. We now have a situation on Park Street Common, which has been destroyed by construction. They have left crushed stone in sight and covered it over so nobody can see it with what they call topsoil and then hydroseed it. But that crushed stone is still there and it's going to come up for years through the topsoil. We have a lake at the corner of Jack's Court and Park Street through incompetent grading. We have piles of crushed stone still left in place, uncovered, covered now with snow, but it's going to be okay. We keep being reassured. I don't believe the reassurances after everything that I've seen. They have dragged the trailer off of Park Street Common, the entire length of the common, disrupting the topsoil and the hydroseeding that they left in place. And so it has to be done all over again. We, along of other fellow citizens, donated money for memorial trees to be planted in the common. It remains to be seen whether those trees will survive. We have to wait till the spring to see if they're still alive. They planted heavy equipment adjacent to those trees, which is not good for the roots, compacting the soil. We were told by Hoyle Tanner, who were the engineers for the project, that the specifications in the contract did not allow for the contractor to use Park Street Common for stockpiling equipment and materials. We were told by Hoyle Tanner that the town, somebody in the town, allowed them to do that. I want to know who is going to pay for reconstructing Park Street Common and paying for the damage. And so, as a word of warning to you folks in this area, again, I totally believe that the project is necessary, but you should be very concerned about the conditions under which the contract will be bid and what restrictions will be put on your contractor.
Thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to respond to that?
Hello, Paul Velocich, town engineer. The question for West Side Drive, will the contractor be pre-qualified? We don't have plans to pre-qualify contractors. With bids, we do a review of the bidder or the apparent low bidder and check references and that sort of thing. And we did with the contractor on the Salem Street project. And we have some experience with the contractor on Salem Street Project 2. And I would say the project is not over there at the Salem Street project. We still have work to do. It was quite the effort to try to button it up at the end of construction season here. And more to come on the Salem Street project. But for the West Side Drive, right now there is no plans for pre-qualifying contractors.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this article?
Yes, Don Clement again. A quick question. Thank you, Mr. Dean, for those breakdowns of the percentages. So am I to understand that the $11.50 tax impact for 100,000 is just on the 40%, which is drainage? So the other 60% of costs will have to be borne out of water and sewer fees, undetermined at this point. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this article? Hearing no one else, this article will appear on the ballot without any changes. The next article is Article 5, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $798,000 for the purpose of making intersection improvements to the Pine Street, Linden Street, and Front Street intersection, and the Railroad Avenue, Winter Street, and Columbus Street intersection, and to authorize the issuance of not more than $798,000 of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and further to authorize the Select Board to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and to determine the rate of interest thereon, and further to authorize the Select Board to apply for, obtain, and accept federal, state, and other aid, if any, including principal forgiveness, which may become available for this project. Debt service will be paid from the general fund. Estimated tax impact, assuming 10-year bond at 4%, is 50 cents per thousand or $5 per 100,000 of assessed property value. Bond payments would begin approximately 1 year after issuance. Selectwoman Gilman?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. This project is the effort that's been going on, or studied anyway, since 2019 when we approved a study for this and chose everybody's favorite, or perhaps least favorite, intersections. And we chose two to start with that have been, to me, the most problematic. And where's Doug Flockhart? I grew up on the other side of the tracks, and you might consider this a project that is also the wrong side of the tracks. I avoid the Front Street, Linden Street intersection anytime I can. So we're looking at a roundabout at Front Street, Linden Street. It's not a rotary. There's one lane traffic around, so you're not going to be passed by somebody going around to another direction. And the other project is traffic calming kind of techniques for the Winter Street, Columbus Ave, and Railroad Avenue area. And I'm going to let the town planner speak to the details. Thank you.
Mr. Latchik, thank you.
Yeah, Paul Velocich, town engineer again. But what I'd like to do is introduce our consultant, Greg Bakos from VHB. He's the one that did the traffic study of the 4 intersections and came up with various recommendations of those 4 intersections, and that report is on the town website, but we're specifically talking about 2 intersections here, the Pine, Linden, Front Street, and then the Winter Columbus intersection also. So with that, I'd like to have Mr. Bakos come up and generally talk about the project. And I don't know, Andy, do you have that sketch at all on the overhead at all, the rotary sketch? I mean, not the rotary, the roundabout.
Is it in the pamphlet that has explanatory information?
It is.
So we're speaking about this lovely explanation packet that's at the center of the auditorium.
Okay, it might not be up there then, Andy. Mr. Bakos?
So there is an illustration in the packet, if anyone's interested, is here. And this is also on the town website for those who are viewing from home. But our IT wizard is going to bring it up for us.
It's coming quick. While he's trying to raise the image, I can speak to the purpose of the project. And I think it was already touched on that the existing intersection is really a troublesome intersection in that the geometry is, or the geometry presents certain safety concerns. Front Street is, a 2-lane roadway, east-south. It carries the majority of the traffic through the intersection, and the 2 side streets, Linden and Pine, come in together into the intersection. So it's a very awkward situation from the side streets. There's when you come in from either Linden or Pine, there's a negotiation going on between you and the other car coming from the other street on who has the right of way, and there's a broad expanse of pavement there with really no control. So the safety concerns are primarily related to cars entering Front Street from the side streets, taking risks, trying to get out, into the heavier traffic. That's a tough situation today, and I think you hit on it pretty well. The other concern is that pedestrians in that intersection really don't have good protection. The opening across Linden and Pine it's almost 100 feet, for a pedestrian to cross. And again, there's really no control for them. So the roundabout alternative does several things. It has a traffic calming effect. It controls all the movements. It gives everybody a fair shake at getting through the intersection, whereas today, everybody on Front Street has really the right-of-way, and it's hard to get onto Front Street. So it also provides superior pedestrian accommodations, where each leg has a crosswalk with a raised splitter island in the middle of that approach that provides refuge for the pedestrians. So as the pedestrians cross, they only have to cross one lane at a time, and they only have to look in one direction. So it makes them more visible, and it provides a better environment for pedestrians to cross. So the roundabout is predicted to operate at very good levels of service. It's very efficient at processing cars. It's a better alternative than a traffic signal, which would have been actually very difficult to do given the geometry. So we feel that we're providing motorist safety, calming traffic, providing better access to the side streets, and improving pedestrian crossings. The other intersection, I think, again, it was characterized pretty well as traffic calming, but I think the primary reason for making these minor improvements is to improve sight lines. We're bumping out key locations where it will give the motorists a better sight line in all directions. We're also improving pedestrian crossings in this alternative. Very low investment. I call it really tweaking the existing geometry to improve safety. So that's it in a nutshell. I think I'd entertain questions.
Thank you. Other questions?
Jerry Hamill, 17 Little Pine Lane. Could take you back in time a little bit. Probably 45, 50 years ago, we had the same talk about the traffic circle in the same place. So the town back at that time with the DPW, they went to King Chevrolet, they got this big planter that was about 5 feet tall with a tree in it. They brought it over to there, and they actually built the traffic circle. They put the planter in the middle of the road, very similar to what you see in the plans. And everybody thought it was going to be a good idea, but the town wanted to try it first before we did it permanently. The end result was a disaster. Well, we found that the traffic coming from the east side of town basically would have to come into the circle. When they cut into the circle, they had to vie for the traffic coming out of Linden Street. They had to go all the way around. It was a one-way circle such as this was, and so the traffic got tied up, actually backed up further with the traffic circle than it did without the traffic circle. After a few weeks of having this up, they took it down, and we haven't heard about this for about 40, 45 years. Trying this thing was one of the most practical things that the town ever did. I look at this project right now, I look back at what we did back then, and I see the same problems. In concept, there's a lot of people who haven't experienced it. They're going to find that it sounds great, but will it really work? I would strongly advise that we actually go back to what we did 45, 50 years ago, put something there and try it out. I did watch the presentation that was done on this here. This is one of the smaller ones that can be done. So that means that the medium on the inside is going to have the little curved up, slanted so that a truck could actually drive over it because it's that tight. We had problems back then, the same type of problems. They had cones around it, constantly knocking down the cones. It was people that were coming out of Linden Street ended up going down Gill Street instead, and they didn't want to go into the traffic. So what they did is they went down Lincoln Street. So the whole thing, it was a great lesson in sometimes what you want isn't what you want. I think that there are other alternatives. When I watch a presentation, for example, what we vote at the high school, we create a big roundabout. We run the traffic down Gill Street, and we come out that way. I didn't see that in part of the presentation, and Gill Street is one of the widest streets in Exeter. And when you go on any voting day, you're putting thousands of people doing that route, and it works very successfully. You know, I really feel that there, and one of the other things that we found out, that the biggest problem we had back then was the traffic coming out of Linden Street. If we could avoid that, we could avoid the problem. Front Street has no problems. Coming out of Pine Street should have been, the stop sign should have been brought forward a little bit, and by doing that, it's going to have a better line of sight. So I think there's other things that we can try before we spend this type of money. And who knows, you know, maybe times have changed, maybe the cars are smaller. You know, we had big cars back 50 years ago. But I think it's definitely some of the things I don't really want to spend that type of money without knowing it's going to work correctly. As far as the Columbus Ave, I agree. I think that's a great alternative for Columbus Ave. There was supposed to be a hearing on this here prior to, which I want to talk to, because I don't know how many people in here remember that, of what we actually did then. But unfortunately, I either missed when the public hearing was going to be, because I didn't see it located, because I felt that maybe if I could have talked then, maybe we could have done something. We could have taken the day or day and a half to set up something temporary and see what the people of the town feel. But I hope you'll kind of listen to this here and don't make the mistake right in the beginning. Try it out first, because we know from back then it didn't work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eileen Flockhart, 7 Jacks Court. I look at this project as, I think, being an old person, an old dog, you can teach me a new trick, and I've seen roundabouts in other parts of the country and in other places that really are a great solution. I know, as a person who parks on either side and who frequently walks across to church and back, that's a very frightening intersection, and as a driver, I really am not happy with it. I was wondering, what would the dimension of the space, the roundabout itself, what would be the dimension in the interior, and would there be a way to put something greener than concrete in there?
The center island would be...
So if you could please speak to the mic.
Yeah, sorry. The intent would be that the center island would be landscaped. It would be surrounded by an apron that would be either concrete or brick or something like that.
Okay.
The truck apron that is mountable that was mentioned before. But the center would be landscaped.
Okay. We could put a tree. No, maybe not a tree. But I do think that space can not only end up being something attractive, but it can help to sort of ease the flow, give people an introduction to what a roundabout is. It's really not that hard. In fact, it's really quite wonderful, and it sure beats the chaos of 4-way, 5-way stops and nobody knows when to go. So I strongly support it, and I think we've come a long way from flower pots or trees in the middle of the... I think we could do this. I really do, and I think it's worth doing, and I think the safety of the citizens in town is worth it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Good morning, Don Clement, 5 Thelma Drive. Madam Moderator, I have an amendment to this article, please.
Okay,
And my wife is
hold on
going to bring it
just
up
a
to the
second.
town clerk now, because it's a long walk. By the way, I'm not sure I'm crazy about this setup here, where people are talking, everybody has to turn around to see us talk. I liked it better when it was down there.
So
At least
we're
I was
trying this
facing-
out. This is a holdover, one of the last holdovers from COVID. This is a holdover from COVID. So we're trying it out. It's
Okay.
It's easier for people to reach from the...
Yeah, no, I agree.
The
Yeah.
auditorium.
It's just that-
So I'm assessing this.
Thank you.
Glad to get input. Thank you.
That's good. Do you wish to read the amendment, or do you want me to read it?
It's the amendment. She just gave it to me.
So I apologize for the small print, the small font.
Okay, so do you wish to read your amendment, or do you want me to read it?
Either one, either way.
Pardon me?
It's up to you.
Okay, I'll read what we've got here. So what this does is to strike out a portion and substitute different dollar amounts.
Correct.
So the new portion is at the beginning of the article, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $78,000 for the purpose of making intersection improvements to the Railroad Avenue, Winter Street, and Columbus Street intersection, and authorize the issuance of not more than $78,000 of bonds or notes, and the rest would remain the same. So essentially, it strikes out the provisions having to do with the Linden Street, Front Street, Pine Street intersection. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Let me give you the reasons for this. Number one, I do live on that side of town, too. I've lived there for almost 45 years, so I'm very familiar with that intersection. I probably travel it several times a day, maybe more, between my wife, more times than not.
I'm just going to pause for a second, because we need a second on your motion.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Before we really get into it. I see Darius, is that correct? Second? Thank you.
I jumped ahead, I apologize.
No, go ahead.
It is a problematic intersection. But what you do is you use caution, you use good driving techniques, you take your time. The issue I have with the roundabout is that we're going to spend approximately $750,000 for a solution that may not really resolve the problem we think we're trying to resolve. The roundabout is usually to keep traffic flowing, so everybody gets moving around. That's not going to be conducive to what's required there. Plus, we're talking about doing some land taking, property taking, losing parking places, some of them of which are, by the way, out in front of the inn, and I don't know if that's public or private spaces. We're going to have a driveway right on the roundabout. Who has a driveway on a roundabout or a rotary circle? We're going to have crosswalks. Who puts crosswalks around a roundabout? I mean, it seems to me that with the crosswalks now, we have two stop signs, one at Pine Street and one at Linden Street. So pedestrians have a chance to cross because traffic can stop. With a roundabout, it's going to be continuous. It's going to be like probably trying to jump on a carousel that's moving at a fast rate of speed. It's going to be even more difficult for pedestrians to cross with a roundabout than it is today. I would suggest that, as Mr. Hamill said, test it out before we spend $750,000. And if we spend $750,000 and it doesn't work, we've wasted $750,000. Our history of doing intersection projects right now is a little suspect. Or a lot of stuff that was done at the Brentwood Road, Epping Road, a lot of people don't like. I don't want to get into the same situation for $750,000. So why I've made this amendment is, number one, I think we need to come back, redo the study other alternatives, which I think we didn't really do here for that intersection. I think we had a predetermined notion what it should be, and we worked toward that. The Columbus Ave, Railroad Ave, I think is a worthwhile project. Although, for what I see what we're doing, $78,000 is a lot of money to spend on very minor improvements. But I'd like to see that go ahead, and so would a lot of other people. But the other $750,000 for Linden Street, let's go back and think about this. We're rushing to judgment. I think it's going to be a mistake. It's going to create more problems. There are other ways we can get around and do this. So that's what I would urge people to support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to speak to the amendment? We're now discussing the amendment, not the underlying article. Is someone wanting to speak? All right, yes?
Jerry Hamill. I'm in favor of the amendment. I would just like to actually maybe go back to the way that we did it before and have the town do something temporarily to see if it works, and if it doesn't work, that at least we're not going to spend $750,000 and find out that we have a problem. But I think this is something that really needs to be tried before we do it permanently.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak to the amendment?
Hi, my name is Florence Felder. I live at 5 Pine Street, and I've actually been dealing with the Pine Street, Front Street, Linden Street intersection for 46 years because I've lived in all locations that I've used that intersection. I don't know the accident record there, but I do know I use it every morning, and it's very, very dangerous. I see a lot of near misses, and you just kind of have to jump out sometimes to go left. And maybe the solution is to just try something, but I really would like to see something happen there to make it less dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on the amendment? Seeing no one else wishing to speak, we will vote on the amendment. All in favor of this amendment to Article 5, please signify by saying aye and raising your voter cards in the air. 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I count about 11 people, okay? All opposed, please raise your cards and say nay. Nay. The nays appear to have it. So this amendment has failed. Are there other folks who wish to speak to this article? We're back talking about the article itself now.
Mary Teagle, 9 Union. I'm right in the middle of the stretch of Front Street. It is very dangerous, and I'm in favor of trying this, both intersections. I have some questions about details, and I won't belabor them now, but they aren't clear here, and I would highly recommend the projects go through another iteration of citizen involvement. Just one detail, the wound earths are deplored by bicyclists, but I think it's a bigger problem, and I hope this one addresses it. And one more thing, I frequently cross near the railroad tracks in between the two intersections, and I would say 3 or 4 times a week. And I have been nearly taken out, I guess maybe 1 out of 10 crossings. And I mean, I lived in Boston. I know how to cross the city street. You wait, you do the whole thing. Recently, there was a discussion about this on Exeter's Facebook page, and I was really disappointed to see the antagonism that was expressed by drivers, who are also walkers, antagonism against pedestrians. And so, here's an idea. The roundabout was described as a traffic, I can't remember the exact word, but somehow to ease the flow of traffic. I would prefer that it be reframed to be a design, in actuality, that encourages and supports collaboration between all the users of that public space, walkers, drivers, bicyclists. So there you go. Thanks.
Okay, I'd just like to ask perhaps the town engineer what the options are for public participation in this process if this goes forward. Will there be additional meetings or things of that nature?
Right now, there is none planned, but we do have the consultant, Greg, that discussed this with you folks already, available for a meeting if one is required or wanted. So right now, there is no plan for another one unless requested.
Okay, so one could request a meeting by going through you, is that correct?
Probably through the town manager's office, and then we can have a bigger presentation discussion that way.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any further questions on the article? Yes.
Yeah, Tony Burke, 108 Kingston Road. I want to say from my gut and as a driver and a pedestrian, I'm in support of this. Driving through there is like playing chicken. Walking through there is like playing Frogger. And I do have a question, even though I'm in support of it. I've seen counter-arguments saying that this is not, although it feels extremely dangerous, and I've had lots of near, collisions there. It apparently is not statistically the most dangerous place in the town, and I saw somebody ask why spend money on that if there's something more dangerous. So I just wanted to ask somebody to proactively answer that, because I know that's been thrown out there in the, the community forum kind of space. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there someone who has that information at the top of their head? Yes. Could you approach the microphone? Thank you.
Yeah, we did.
And your name, sir?
Greg Backus, again, from VHB, the consulting firm. The original study included collecting crash data for a 5-year period, and we studied 88 intersections. This intersection actually fell at number 27. It's interesting because there's not a lot of crash history in any of the intersections, so 1 or 2 crashes either way can move you up or down that scale a lot. We use that as part of our safety analysis. The other part is just watching behavior, and we also consider crash severity. This intersection really sets itself up for severe crashes where you have broadside type crashes where vehicles are coming out of the side streets. So it's not just the data, it's observing, the actual operations and interpreting the safety concerns.
Thank you very much. Are there further questions? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Anthony Zwan, 7 Marlborough Street. I'm not quite as old as Jerry and Don, but I've been in town for about 25 years now. I didn't see the tree in the trial, but I can't help but I speak in favor of the proposed article, and I can't help myself. I have to respond to some of the things, the points that were made by Don and by Jerry, but also I'm motivated by actually a news article that was literally just on TV February 2nd on PBS NewsHour that I'll refer to in just a moment. Well, I'll just do that right now. We talk about, well, people sort of figure it out. Well, guess what? People are not figuring it out as far as motor vehicle safety is concerned. All you got to do is look around you and see how poorly people are driving these days. It's dangerous out there, and it's not getting any better. And the statistics that were thrown out of this article February 2nd were just shocking, but just in terms of percentages, a 13% increase in motor vehicle fatalities since 2010. It's pretty easy to look up. And in terms of pedestrian deaths, they've been rising and are currently as bad as they were in 1982. Without boring you with the actual numbers, look it up yourself, do your own research. I think you will find that safety is getting worse, not better, despite motor vehicle design and what have you, and we need to follow through with road design as well. Now listen, that intersection, was probably designed for horses and buggies, and it doesn't have a whole hell of a lot of room, but, it's, people drive through it at a great speed. Also, 45 years ago, people were not used to roundabouts. We now have very good examples of roundabouts. There's one in a really tight spot in Rye. It works really well. I'm sure we've all driven through it. There's one in downtown Middlebury, Vermont that I'm familiar with. It's gorgeous. Downtown, it's kind of like ours, Middlebury. It's just impossible, with the bandstand. You just cannot fix it. But by God, they did with a roundabout. And Amesbury, I think, is a pretty good good example as well. So those are just some points I wanted to make. As far as the point of, let's be reasonable, let's just test it out, that's a setup for failure. You can't test this thing out. I mean, if you put a cone in the middle and then say, people figure it out, or put a tree in the middle and say people figure it out, you can't test this design in place. I mean, you can take other intersections and look at existing roundabouts and see that they work well. To say that, let's be reasonable and test it out in that location is just not a fair way to go about it. The other comment about this that was made, that these things are designed to keep traffic flowing, I beg to differ on that. I mean, it's how you interpret it. If flowing means going through an intersection at 45 miles an hour, yeah, it's going to slow it down, but that's exactly what you want it to do. You want to calm the traffic. Also, these are not all just about cars. They're about pedestrians and bicycles, and as I already referenced, the fatalities are going up. So the feature of the crosswalks, of course, is one of the major positive features of this thing. I have other points I could make to rebut some of the earlier comments, but I will stop there. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. I see a number of people here. I am mindful of the time. It's a little after 10:30, and we're on number 5 of our 33. So if folks could please keep to 3 minutes, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Yes, your name, sir?
Christopher Zigmont, Crestview Drive. I'm here to speak on behalf of the alternative transportation modes of walking and cycling. I am a member of the cycling community here, and I'm here to offer very vigorous support for this project, and only ask that I'm wondering why it's not even bigger, why we don't incorporate bicycle lanes in this proposal. But I do like the design as it is. It gives us a fighting chance for the 35% of the population that is eligible for driving age but can't or don't drive. It allows the kids a safe route to school, provides for a much safer cycling and pedestrian access to that intersection, and it's an absolute step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Doug Flockhart, 7 Jacks Court, not my side of the tracks, but I drive there. I think the proposal suffers from a mindset that says traffic lights are a no-no and eminent domain is a no-no. I believe what has been proposed, and I certainly agree that this certainly is needed. Let's not wait until somebody gets killed. But that traffic circle that has been proposed is too small. It's not going to work. In order to make it bigger, we would have to engage in eminent domain. But we're not going to engage in eminent domain. So how about the other no-no? How about a traffic light that makes it safe for everybody? It makes it safe for the driver. It makes it safe for the walker. It makes it safe for the person with a bicycle.
Thank you. Yes.
Hello, Jay Childs, 7 Hunter Place in Exeter. I wanted to support what the previous speaker said. The problem I have is when Dr. Zwan was talking about bad driving behavior, you can see the same type of behavior in a small roundabout that you can see with what's going on here. It's not necessarily, I've been to a number of places in the state that have put in these smaller roundabouts, and with the driving behavior of them being so small and only one lane, you get people competing to get into the roundabout because the car coming out of the other side is right by you. So I think it would create, in many ways, its own choke point. If you're going to do a roundabout, I think it needs to be bigger, and in and of itself is not going to. A lot of people treat, and it may be because of the way the signs are positioned, they treat Pine Street to Front Street and Linden Street to Front Street as yields, not stops. They're stops. You're supposed to stop. And I think that's the problem. So I support the idea of, I don't want to be the old curmudgeon, but I grew up on Gill Street. And back then, we were thinking about the fact that why isn't there a traffic light set up in that whole area? And I would support that. I don't think putting $800,000 into this in the end is really going to solve the problem.
Thank you. Are there others who wish to speak to the article? Seeing none, the article will appear on the ballot as written. Our next article is number 6, solar array landfill property, $1,609,645. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,609,645 to add to Article 4 of the 2021 town meeting for the purpose of constructing a solar array on town-owned land described on map 98 Lot 3 and tax map 100 Lot 4, and authorize the issuance of not more than $1,609,645 of bonds or notes to be added to the $3,617,629 in bonding authority approved in Article 4 of the 2021 town meeting, all in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and further to authorize the Select Board to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and to determine the rate of interest thereon, and further to authorize the Select Board to apply for, obtain, and accept federal, state, or other aid, if any, including principal forgiveness, which may become available for this project. Debt service will be paid by the revenue generated by selling the power and renewable energy certificates and the proceeds from the 30% solar investment tax credit. Estimated tax impact none, assuming revenues and assuming a 20-year bond at 4% interest. Bond payments would begin approximately 1 year after issuance. 3/5 ballot vote required for approval. Recommended by the Select Board 4-0. Ms. Gilman?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I know some of you are sitting out there saying, hey, wait, what? We already passed this. But in the interim, costs have risen, and grant money has become available. So if you read the description, we have a possibility, yes, we have to raise and appropriate the funds. That's a state law configuration of how we do our budgets, et cetera. But we have the opportunity to pay it off with a grant from the, whichever one it was, a federal grant. Plus selling the renewable energy credits helps Unitil, our local provider, meet the needs of the people who are requesting that they use a mix of the current gas-fired generation and alternative energy. So everybody kind of wins in this one. So I'm going to pass it over to this time to the actual town planner. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Sharples?
Thank you. Andy is going to pull up a PowerPoint presentation. I'll be brief. I think to answer the question, didn't we vote on this before and what happened? I'm sure some of you in this room are familiar with the vote in 2021, and I just feel like it warrants explanation as to what has happened since 2021 and why we're asking for for funds in this warrant article. You don't have it? No. Okay, off we go then. So didn't we vote on this before? Yes, the town did approve a warrant article in 2021 for approximately $3.62 million to construct a 1.77 megawatt solar array at the Crossroad landfill. At that time, we had a proposal from Revision Energy that stated we could build a 1.77 megawatt solar array at the Crossroad landfill for the $3.62 million. Because we went out for proposals, we got one, we ended up working with Revision Energy, and we had a proposal that said we could fund it for that amount, and that's what we took to the voters. After the Exeter voters approved the project in March of 21, Revision Energy initiated the interconnection study through Unitil, which is a pretty significant expense that the town wasn't willing to take on, but they were willing, Revision Energy, in partnering with us, was willing to do that, but they weren't going to do that until after the vote, and we understood that. So they started that after the vote, but although the agreement, the interconnection study agreement said it would be 55 days. It ended up being over a year till we got that study back. So it took much longer than anticipated. Unfortunately, during that time, I think many of us are acutely aware that inflation went rampant. There was rampant inflation during that time. The solar array, the equipment, the labor went up about 30%. Also, when we got the Unitil interconnection study back, they estimated the improvements to interconnect, meaning the equipment needed for the array to connect into their system, was approximately $640,000, which Revision had estimated about $125,000. So there was a big gap there, plus inflation. Really, we didn't know what to do. We looked at, move the project forward with the $3.62 million. It was no longer viable. We looked at a smaller array. We went to the select board. We had multiple update meetings, and we just couldn't make the numbers work. The numbers were okay, but they weren't, it wasn't something I felt comfortable, recommending that we move forward with. Until August 22, this past summer, the Inflation Reduction Act got signed into law, which allowed a 30% investment tax credit for these type of systems. And it's not a competitive system. I mean, it's not a competitive program. You don't have to compete for the funds. You just build it, flick the switch, get the rebate, and it's a tax rebate. As long as you meet the eligibility criteria, which this system, I believe, does, you get the credit. So it's not an if or, a competitive grant program where, 10 people apply and 3 people get the funds. It's anyone who applies with an eligible system will get the tax credit. So basically what that 30% did was 30% offset the increase in the cost, most, if not all, of this additional funding that we need the voters to approve. So that's why we're here. We came back with the support of the select board and in town administration. We're asking for an additional $1.6 million for a total of about $5.2 million to build the 1.77 megawatt solar array. And just to talk about the numbers real quick, we did have Revision Energy put together a pro forma to what they estimate will be the savings of this solar array. And they estimate over the 25-year warranty period, which is the warranted period of the system, the town will be cash positive of about $4.8 million. We hired our own third-party consultant, an independent consultant who doesn't have anything to do with solar arrays or building them. They just help folks that are looking into these type of things and kind of an unbiased third-party review. And while their pro forma wasn't as robust as Revision's, they still came to the conclusion that it was going to be cash positive from year one, meaning it will never go in the red. It'll get money from the investment tax credit that will be able to pay off the note, and it'll never have any tax impact on the residents. So both pro formas look good. They both provide a positive cash flow from year one without ever going into the red, and we thought that was very beneficial to go forward with a third-party review. And I believe, so the additional, it's a summary, the additional $1.6 million is needed to construct the array, which will mostly, if not all, be offset by the investment tax credit. The solar array is shown to be cash positive in both Revisions and our Competitive Energy Services, our third-party review for the life of the project, resulting in no tax impact to the town. And unlike in 2021, the town will be ready to enter into a contract shortly after a successful vote. Revision Energy is committed to honoring their latest estimate until after the March vote, because we just got it recently, and the interconnection study has now been finalized, so none of that work needs to be done, so we'll be in a position to go right after a potential successful vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone to speak on this article?
Darius Thompson, 15 Drinkwater Road, Exeter. The questions that I have is that one, why did we not look at a lease purchase option for this whole project? In other words, that we lease the company Revision pays for everything, but we lease it from them and maybe offset the cost for that. But you're coming back to us for additional funds to raise. I agree it makes sense to do a green project, but at the time, do we know the cost of the interconnect? What it's going to cost for this project to interconnect to Unitil? Is that an additional cost that we're going to be asked to vote on and approve going forward? In other words, are you going to come back to the voters again asking for, oh, we need another $500,000 to interconnect?
Is there someone who can speak to that? Mr. Sharples, thank you.
I can answer both of those. I'll answer them in reverse. The answer is no. The $5.2 million includes the interconnection cost for Unitil. It's also site permitting and design is included in that, and labor and materials for the system, and also a contingency, because design and permitting, when you go through the DES, you don't know exactly what's going to happen. So there's a little bit of a contingency in there too. So the answer is no on that we won't be asking any more funding for the interconnection. And we've really studied the interconnection the last year or so. So we're very confident, and that's what, because a lot of back and forth with Unitil on what exactly is needed to interconnect. The second question was regarding the
lease option.
Yeah, the lease option. That was explored. That was explored with the select board. We explored both of those options when we got proposals. Actually, a couple of proposals were for the lease option. Revision also proposed a lease option to a turnkey. And the lease option is always less savings on the side of the town, but also less risk. But in dealing with the various energy committee, the sustainability committee, the select board, the turnkey project was much more attractive from a financial standpoint. So that is what, we brought that to the select board, and we decided to go forward with a turnkey project and not lease purchase.
Thank you. Thank you. Other questions with regard to this article?
I don't have a question, I have a statement. My name is Renee Allen, and I am chairperson of the Energy Committee. The Town Energy Committee works on projects to save the taxpayers money through efficiencies in energy, and we worked closely with Mr. Sharples on this project the first time around and the second time around. We were sorely disappointed that it wasn't working out the first time around, and very happy when it turned out that we could get 30% off of this. So we revoted as an energy committee if we would support the project the second time around with the new variables, and it was a unanimous decision that the energy committee continues to support the solar array project. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah. Lou Hitzrodt, 185 High Street. One of the things that hasn't been mentioned, and I think it's extremely important, and that is that the solar array will offset, I believe it's 2 million pounds of carbon dioxide annually. And Dave, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but as I recall, the revision proposal says that, yes, there'll be 2 million pounds of less carbon dioxide going into the atmosphere as a result of our use of this solar array. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who wishes to speak to this article? I see someone approaching the mic.
Tony Burke again, 108 Kingston Road. Big solar fan. We have lots of it at our house. It's been nothing but great. As a suggestion, question, something, I wanted to know how to analyze what had gone wrong, and the presentation today is great and very clear. But as of this morning, when I visited the town's webpage for this project, none of these additional bits of information were readily available. And I imagine there are going to be people who aren't solar fans or whatever that are going to see this and go, oh, there they go again. And I think that this nice, clear explanation should be readily accessible to people who aren't following this as closely and are going to see this and get hit over the head. So just a heads up that maybe some more web links, and also maybe an explanation of the differences in the revisions cost analysis versus the outside one. Would be nice to know, like what the assumptions were, whether some are more conservative than the other. But I couldn't find any of those things today. Might be my fault, but.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address this? Mr. Sharples, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for that question about the comparison and the different assumptions. I did have that on my PowerPoint slide, but without the pro formas up there, I kind of skipped it, but I will briefly. Most of the assumptions, when you do a pro forma, you're assuming what's going to happen in the future. So they are assumptions. They're best educated guesses. They're made with a lot of information. We vetted those assumptions that both of those parties made. We asked a lot of questions, the various committees and so forth, tested these assumptions, asked how they arrived at them. That said, the two pro formas basically agreed on pretty much everything: the renewable energy certificates cost that we would get, the generation of the solar array, the cost of the system, the cost of operation and maintenance, and so forth. The only significant difference was what's Competitive Energy Services estimated as the future value of the net metering credit, which is the value of electricity. They proposed, in year one, they proposed 12 cents per kilowatt hour is what we're going to generate out of that system, which is less than what it is today. So they proposed it being a little bit less in year one, and then they proposed actually utility prices going down to 8 cents the first 3 years, and then slowly rebounding and not coming back up to where they are today until 2058, for 35 years. That was our third-party review, basically saying they see electricity costs going down and staying down and not coming back up to current prices for 35 years, which, if that happens, I think we're all happy, because that would be fantastic. But even with those assumptions, it still showed a positive over $1.6 million in revenue to the town. The revision proposal showed 15 or 14.7%, just about 15 cents the first year, and then they added a 2.5% escalator each year onto that price. And that assumption was based on, if you look back historically, the last 20, 30 years, on the trend line, while electricity costs have gone up and spiked and dropped in various years, over time, they escalate somewhere around 2.5%. So they were following that trend. So that was really the difference between the two pro formas.
Super. Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak to this article? Looks like no one is. So this article will appear without any changes on the ballot. I note now that we are approaching Article 7. It's not quite the seventh inning stretch because we have a lot more articles. If anyone wants to stand up, do a stretch, that's great. I promise I will not sing Sweet Caroline, so you're safe. I'm hoping that we can pick up the pace a little bit through the next few articles. We have a couple petition warrant articles that I think folks are going to want to talk about at the end. So I want to try to keep this moving. Article 7, groundwater source development, $500,000, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $500,000 for the purpose of continuing efforts to develop groundwater sources in the town, and to authorize the issuance of not more than $500,000 of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and further to authorize the Select Board to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and to determine the rate of interest thereon, and further to authorize the Select Board to apply for, obtain, and accept federal, state, or other aid, if any, including principal forgiveness, which may become available for this project. Debt service to be paid from the Water Fund. 3/5 ballot vote required for approval, recommended by the Select Board 4-0. Is there someone who wishes to speak to this? Mr. Vlasic?
Paul Vlasic, town engineer. What I'd like to do is introduce our consultant for the project, Thomas Page, works for Underwood Engineers. I know he'll keep it brief. Very important project we've got going is trying to find another groundwater source. He'll give a brief update of how we got to here and what this is about. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, good morning. I'm Tom Page, project manager with Underwood Engineers, and this is part of an ongoing process where work in the past has identified the need for additional water sources to supplement the town's existing groundwater and surface water supplies that supply your drinking water. The town's been investigating potential options to meet your current and future demands, and the consultants for the town have identified a promising groundwater source as a result of those investigations, and that would be a gravel pack well near Drinkwater Road. And I can't emphasize enough, it's very hard to locate a new source these days that is both productive and permittable in the sense of having enough setbacks and free of potential contamination sources and so forth to develop a new water source. Based on the work to date, a preliminary well siting report and application has been submitted to the state for review to advance the permitting for that well, and negotiations are in process with the landowner. The funds that have been approved in a past appropriations will be used to install the final production well and permit that. This year's request is to advance the design and the engineering for the infrastructure, which include a well house and a raw water transmission main to the existing Larry Lane treatment plant, which was originally designed with some additional capacity for future development. And this article is also important because it's going to support refining the location and the scope of the proposed facilities. And locating those will help with the negotiations with the landowner and refine the cost and scope of the project for construction. Any questions?
I think you have wowed them. Doesn't appear there are any questions. Thank you.
Thanks.
The next article is Article 8, Court Street Sewer Pump Station Equipment Replacement, $400,000. I beg your pardon? Are we backing up to Article 7? I need you to go to the mic. I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Darius.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I did not hear you state that Article 7 will...
I did not state that. It
Yes.
would happen anyway, but I'm happy to state it. There being no changes, this article will appear on the ballot as written. Thank you, Darius. All right. Now we're proceeding to Article 8. Court Street Sewer Pump Station Equipment Replacement, $400,000. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $400,000 for the purpose of replacing aged equipment at the Court Street Sewer Pump Station, and to authorize the issuance of not more than $400,000 of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and further, to authorize the Select Board to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes, and to determine the rate of interest thereon, and further to authorize the Select Board to apply for, obtain, and accept federal, state, or other aid, if any, including debt principal forgiveness, which may become available for this project. Debt service will be paid from the sewer fund. Mr. Vlasic, are you to speak on this one? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Court Street Pump Station has 3 pumps that are in desperate need of replacement. That is, the $400,000 is for the replacement of these 3 pumps.
Thank you very much. I failed to note this, a 3/5 ballot vote is required for this, and it is recommended by the Select Board 4-0. Anyone else wish to speak to this article? Seeing none, Article 9 has to do with choosing town officers, to choose all necessary town officers, auditors, or committees for the ensuing year. We do not need to debate or amend that, so we will move on. The next one is the big one, Article 10, the 2023 operating budget. Shall the town of Exeter raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts set forth on the budget posted with the warrant, or as amended by vote of the first session, for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $21,287,697, Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $21,049,573, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Town of Exeter, or by law, or the governing body, may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, Roman 10 and Roman 16, to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Estimated tax impact, 43 cents per $1,000 of assessed property value, $43 for $100,000 of assessed property value. A majority vote is required, and this is recommended by the Select Board 4-0. Mr. Dean.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good morning again, everybody. The budget, as usual this year, was the product of a lot of different hands. I just wanted to recognize Corey Stevens, our Finance Director, Laura Zagopoulos in the Finance Office, also members of the Budget Recommendations Committee, which were referenced earlier today, the Select Board and our department heads, all of whom contributed to crafting this budget and putting it together for your review today. So our town budget and warrant process, we'll just briefly recap that. As you can see, in August, town departments prepare a preliminary budget and submit it to the town manager. September, town manager submits the budget to the Select Board and the BRC, along with capital improvement requests. In October, we receive our health insurance rating, and that helps us adjust our budget initially. And then in October, in November, the Budget Recommendations Committee and the subcommittees all meet with the different departments and formulate their recommendations. Once those recommendations are done, they go over to the Select Board in December. The Select Board discusses the budget, then finalizes the budget for the proposal to the deliberative session and the town voters after a public hearing in January. Then we're here today for the deliberative session, and then the election is on March 14th. The budget format for the town warrant: there are 3 separate operating budget warrant articles. The General Fund, Water Fund, and Sewer Fund. These are 2023 Articles 10, 11, and 12. The warrant articles for the operating budget are in the required format under the RSA, 40-13. Each operating budget has its own default budget, and should the budget article be voted down, the default budget goes into effect. CIP financial articles stand alone for separate vote on the warrant, and those are contained in the warrant here today. The budget is submitted on DRA-approved forms, the MS-636 and the MS-DTB, which you have before you today, and then the warrant was posted on January 30th at all the various locations for the purposes of today's meeting. That is the article again, so we can go to the next slide. Just a little bit of town budget history. The proposed 23 budget, as you see, is $21,287,697. This is a 4-year history you're looking at. The town tax rate, as you can see, has been very stable over the last several years. In 2022, the total tax rate was $596 per thousand, and the town tax share makes up approximately 23% of the total tax levy. A little bit on discussion. The FY23 budget request, as stated, is $21,287,697. That's a 4.42% increase, or a $900,695 increase over the FY22 operating budget article of $20,387,002. The increase is 3.08%, or $636,974 over the adjusted budget of $20,650,723. And the adjusted budget includes lease purchase articles and collective bargaining agreements that are added to the operating budget article to form the next year's base budget. And you can see the budget includes all the major town departments. FY23 general fund budget notes. The largest 3 town departments continue to be police, fire, EMS, and DPW. These budgets make up approximately 67% of the total FY23 town operating budget. Something that definitely hit our budget this year was inflation, and the December 2022 CPI was a 6.5% increase. For employee wages, we're contemplating a step adjustment of 2.5% plus a COLA of 2% for eligible non-union employees. That would be paid in the first pay period in July 2023. Union contracts have a 2.5% step adjustment in July of 2023. There's also a 2% increase for those at the top step that are not receiving a step adjustment. Benefits. On health insurance, there was some good news. We got a decrease of 1.5% for all plans. Non-union employees are currently contributing 14% to Access Blue New England as of July 2023. Non-union employees contributing 21% to the Blue Choice plan as of July 2023. And Blue Choice will actually be phased out at the end of 2023. Retirement increases in FY23 in July, the budget increase on those, $59,769 to the general fund. Some notes on department expenses. Town manager budget is a decrease of $564. That's due to an allocation. Human resources budget has funding for an additional part-time position. The legal budget is increased by $20,000. That's the first increase we've had actually in several years for the legal budget. We're trying to catch up with current rates. The information technology expenses increased by $17,348, and we paid for several items with ARPA funding in 2022 to try to keep that budget down. Elections registration decreased by $94.70 for fewer elections in 2023. Finance, there's a decrease of $18,554 due to a health plan change. In planning, there's a full year of the natural resources planner position that is budgeted in the budget. Tax collection, an increase of $8,100 due to wage and benefit changes. Moving on to police, the first year full funding of the operations lieutenant. FY22 approved collective bargaining agreement is in the budget. The fire and EMS budget is the first year the full funding of the 2 full-time firefighters that were approved by the voters in 2022. And also the FY22 approved collective bargaining agreement with health insurance increases. Communications Health, FY22 health plan changes and a new collective bargaining agreement for that department. DPW administration, this is one of the new positions that we're proposing. It's a GIS manager, and the position will centralize all town GIS functions, and the position is divided 40%, 20%, 20% between the general fund, the water fund, and the sewer fund. In DPW Highway, we have a reduction in paving of $100,000, and we also have a new collective bargaining agreement in the Highway Division. DPW Snow and Ice is level funded. DPW Solid Waste is a large contractual increase of $129,000. The cost of collecting waste is definitely going up. And an increase in recycling containers of $7,000, offset by $37,000 decrease in blue bag expense. Next slide. Thank you. Parks and Recreation, there's a change in health plans, budget reduction of $7,693. In the parks area, change in health plan reduction of $30,048. Special events level funded at $34,000. The library has a $47,677 increase due to the addition of 1 full-time staff. The debt service budget is a net increase of $112,086. Most of that is due to the 10 Hampton Road first year payment due in FY23. Vehicles and equipment, we are proposing new police hybrid vehicles. They're actually backed up by a year due to supply issues, so those are deferred, and we are contemplating a $26,000 sedan replacement. Budget for leases decreased by $81,393 due to the retirement of 2 lease purchase agreements. And then townwide expenses are a net increase of $27,991 as a result of more health buyouts and increased property liability insurance. Workers' compensation insurance decrease of $18,210. And then one note I wanted to make is that this year's budget contains $80,000 for additional wage reclassifications and market adjustments. I mentioned earlier, right now is a very tight labor market, and we've been challenged with recruiting positions, and so this is meant to apply to current positions and those positions that where we're having trouble recruiting to try to become more competitive in the marketplace. You can see those are the budget components of Article 10. Next slide. Just a quick look at a pie chart. Next slide. Main sources of general fund revenue for 23, the same as they usually are. Motor vehicle registration fees, building permits, blue bag solid waste fees, other department income, highway block grant aid, meals and rooms local tax local distribution, and then prior year fund balance. Total revenues that we've calculated to offset the FY23 budget are $7,742,150. The total estimate of the FY23 budget you see there, again, $21,287,697. So the total taxes estimated to be raised by the 23 operating budget would be $13,545,547. Total taxes raised by the 22 operating budget, $12,261,212. Moving on to the default budget. The default budget, the budget goes into effect if the operating budget is voted down and does not affect voting on separate warrant articles. And there's the statutory definition of the default budget. You can read it. The FY23 general fund default budget is $21,049,573, and that's $238,122 less than the FY23 general fund proposed budget. The water fund and sewer fund we'll talk about in a bit, but those default numbers are there as well. These are the default components from Article 10. And then we'll move on to the final analysis. The FY23 proposed budget, 3.08% over the adjusted budget for FY22. The default budget is 1.87% over the FY22 adjusted budget. The dollar increase over FY22 is $636,974. The operating budget tax impact, $6.05 per thousand. The default budget tax impact, $5.94 per thousand. Overlay and veterans credits add 21 cents per thousand to the final rate. So you see the budget tax rate, including overlay veterans credits, $6.26 per thousand, and the 22 tax rate of $5.96 per thousand. So with that, Madam Moderator, we'll take questions on the budget if needed.
Do you see someone at the podium? State your name, please.
Yes, Darius Thompson, 15 Drinkwater Road, Exeter. Two questions. One, what is the balance of the unassigned funds balance? And the second question is more of the tax rate. You indicate that the tax rate's been stable over the last several years, but yet the assessment values have increased, so as a net result, you're increasing taxes. So to say that you can keep it at 5%, but you increase your assessments, you're increasing, you're raising taxes. So I just wanted to make that as a point of clarification.
So your first question having to do with is it the current unassigned fund at this point in the fiscal year?
Yes.
Correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, the current unassigned fund balance stands at $4.6 million.
Thank you. And the other questions that you had, or were those merely observations? Mr. Thompson, okay, thank you very much. Yes.
Good morning, Don Clement, 5 Thelma Drive. Thank you, Mr. Dean, for that presentation. One of the things we keep talking about when we show the warrant articles, we show potential tax impact. And I know for the budget, we said 43 cents per thousand was on the sheet. And I'm asking you to put your thinking hat on. If all the articles that we have passed in March, plus the budget, can you give us an estimate? I know it's difficult because we haven't done all the assessed value yet. Give us an estimate of what the potential tax impact overall will be?
It should be in the area of 640 to 650, Don. That's with no changes in value.
So as opposed to 596.
Right, that's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other questions on the operating budget? Seeing none, that article will appear on the ballot as printed. In consultation, did you wish to speak to the water fund budget or sewer fund budget?
Read the article,
Okay.
people have questions.
So in consultation with the town manager and the chair of the select board, what we will be doing for the rest of the articles until we get to the two petition warrant articles is I will read them, the select board, the town manager, other department heads are available if there are questions, but we're not going to have a particular presentation by anyone from the town with regard to each of those articles. So if questions come up, feel free to go to the microphone and ask questions, but we'll expect to go through these a little bit more quickly. Article 11, the 2023 Water Fund Budget. Shall the town of Exeter raise and appropriate as a water operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts set forth on the budget posted with the warrant, or as amended by vote of the first session, for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $4,549,370. Should this article be defeated, the water default budget shall be $4,391,224, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town of Exeter or by law. Majority vote is required. This is recommended by the Select Board 4-0. Are there any questions on Article 11? Seeing none, that will appear on the ballot without any changes. Article 12, 2023 Sewer Fund Budget. Shall the town of Exeter raise and appropriate as a sewer operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $7,432,301. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $7,194,062, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town of Exeter or by law. Majority vote required, recommended by the Select Board 4-0. Are there any questions or comments on this article? Seeing none, it will appear on the ballot without changes. Article 13, Vector truck replacement. It's the best part of the day when I get to say the word Vector. Vector truck replacement, $548,369. To see if the town will vote to authorize the Select Board to enter into a 7-year lease purchase agreement for $548,369 for the purpose of lease purchasing a replacement for a Vector truck in the Public Works Sewer Department, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,273, which represents the first of 7 annual payments, a total of $636,108 for this purpose. This lease purchase will contain an escape non-appropriation clause. This sum to come from sewer funds. Majority vote required, recommended by the Select Board 4-0. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, that article will appear as on the ballot as written. Article 14, Sewer Capacity Rehabilitation, $380,000. To see if the town will raise and appropriate through a special warrant article the sum of $380,000 for the purpose of engineering services related to sewer capacity rehabilitation. This sum to come from sewer funds. Majority vote required, recommended by the board 4-0. I see someone at the microphone.
Yes, Darius Thompson, 15 Drinkwater Road. I am in favor of this because we're actually using the sewer funds to pay for something that makes sense. Our sewer and water rates are very high. Nice to see that the Select Board's making a recommendation from the Budget Committee and others to actually use the funds that we have, excess funds, to pay for these things instead of coming to taxpayers, such as there's another warrant article to come to us for taxpayers for another item, but I'm in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on Article 14? Seeing none, it will appear on the ballot without changes. Article 15, Linden Street Bridge Rehabilitation, $295,000. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $295,000 for the purpose of making repairs and rehabilitation of the Linden Street Bridge. This sum to come from taxation. Estimated tax impact is .132 per thousand, or $13.17 per 100,000 of assessed property value. The Select Board has designated this a special warrant article. Majority vote required, recommended by the Select Board, 4-0. I see someone at the microphone.
Darius Thompson, 15 Drinkwater Road. Question to the Select Board. And looking at this as a special warrant article, why did you not consider using funds from the unassigned fund balance to pay for this instead of coming to the taxpayers? Again, I'm all in favor of our infrastructure and everything else, but I'm just asking the question, if we have $4 million in the unassigned fund balance, why not use this opportunity to offset that cost?
Is there someone who wishes to respond to that?
The answer to that question is when we develop the budget every year, we do it in such a way that we are contemplating using a certain amount of the unassigned fund balance to lower the tax rate. So that is baked into the budget process, if you will. And so we have also recommended a series of articles in this year's warrant that would be funded out of the fund balance. And the question is, why not fund them all out of the fund balance? And the simple answer to that is that we have to maintain some level of fund balance at an appropriate level. And the GFOA recommends that it be between 5 and 17% of your operating expenses, including the schools, to be able to cash flow and make sure that your cash flow maintains operations. So this particular article is the one article that's not proposed for fund balance.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this article? Seeing none, this article will appear on the ballot without changes. Article 16, Sidewalk Tractor, number 57, replacement $177,705. To see if the town will vote to authorize the Select Board to enter into a 5-year lease purchase agreement for $177,705 for the purpose of lease purchasing a replacement for a sidewalk tractor in the Public Works Department, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $40,286, which represents the first of 5 annual payments, a total of $191,939 for this purpose. This lease purchase will contain an escape non-appropriation clause. This sum to come from general taxation. Estimated tax impact, .018 per thousand, or $1.80 per 100,000 of assessed property value. Majority vote required, recommended by the Select Board, 4-0. I see someone at the mic.
Darius Thompson, 15 Drinkwater Road. And I assume this is another one of the items that was looked at by the Select Board and the town manager not to use the unassigned funds for, but to come to the taxpayers to pay for. Is that correct?
Correct.
So there's more than one?
There is more than one. I misspoke.
Any other comments on the sidewalk tractor replacement?
Jerry Hamill, 17 Little Pine. Are we going to be replacing the other Vector truck? And if we are, does this include the trade-in or allowance that we would be getting for that? Or are we going to have 2 Vector trucks now?
So question, the Vector truck was a previous article. Are you talking about the sidewalk tractor, 87, or going back to the Vector truck?
I'm sorry about the tractor.
Okay, sidewalk tractor number 57. Does someone have a response to that question? I certainly don't.
Paul Velocich again. I'd like to introduce the Maintenance Division Manager, Jeff Beck, and he's responsible for the equipment and the facilities.
Thank you.
Hi. In answer to Jerry's question, we will keep the old sidewalk tractor and just replace it, because we have 3 vehicles in that fleet of sidewalk tractors right now that are over 30 years old, and parts for those units are expensive and hard to come by. So we will be keeping the old unit. It will not be traded or sold outright.
Thank you. Are there other questions or comments on Article 16? Seeing none, that article will appear on the ballot without changes. Article 17, appropriate to Capital Reserve Fund, Parks Improvement, $100,000. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be added to the Parks Improvement Capital Reserve Fund previously established. This sum to come from unassigned fund balance, estimated tax impact none. No amount will be raised by taxation. Are there any questions or comments on this Article 17? I see someone approaching the microphone.
Darius Thompson, 15 Drinkwater Road. Why is those $100,000 being added? What is it being used for, and how is it going to be accounted for?
So is there someone from the maybe Parks and Rec Department that can speak to what is the purpose for the Capital Reserve Fund for Parks Improvement?
Greg Beeson, Exeter Parks and Recreation Director. The $100,000 is going to our capital reserve to help reduce the deferred maintenance on the park system that we had. Approximately, we have a couple $1 million in deferred maintenance. Some of the things that we've been chipping away this year and prior years, we've completed 41 different little projects throughout the park system. Things that we're looking at is accessibility improvement on safety equipment, aesthetics, things that are not in our budget. Approximately $12,000 left in that account, and the select board oversee and approve all expenditures from that account.
Thank you. Any other questions about Article 17? Seeing none, that article will appear on the ballot without changes. Article 18, appropriate to Sick Leave Trust Fund $100,000. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be added to the Sick Leave Expendable Trust Fund previously established. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance. Estimated tax impact none. No amount will be raised by taxes. Majority vote is required. This is recommended by the Select Board 4-0. Is there anyone with questions or comments on this? Seeing none, that will appear on the ballot without changes. Article 19, highway truck replacement, $53,558. To see if the town will raise and appropriate through special warrant article the sum of $53,558 for the purpose of purchasing a replacement for highway truck number 5, purchased in 2011. This replacement is for an existing 1/2-ton truck to a 1/2-ton F-150 4x4 with a plow package. This vehicle is primarily used for everyday activities and one of the department's on-call trucks. It is used with vehicle-mounted aero board during traffic control operations. It is also used to transport manually operated snow blowers to clear crosswalks, building approaches, ramps, train station, and Lincoln Street. This sum to come from unassigned fund balance. Estimated tax impact none. No amount to be raised by taxation. Majority vote required. Recommended by the Select Board 4-0. Are there any questions or comments on Article 19? Seeing none, this article will appear on the ballot without changes. Article 20, Public Works Facility Garage, $50,000. To see if the town will raise and appropriate through special warrant article the sum of $50,000 for the purpose of design work on a new garage at the Public Works Complex on Newfields Road. This sum to come from unassigned fund balance, $25,000, and water funds, $12,500, and sewer funds, $12,500. Estimated tax impact none. No amount to be raised by taxation. The Select Board has designated this a special warrant article. Majority vote required, recommended by the Select Board 4-0. And I see someone at the microphone.
Judy Rowan, 33 Prentice Way. I'm concerned about
the direction that the design work would take and what guidelines such work would be given. A previous iteration of the garage design was quite pie in the sky, and I believe beyond taxpayers' ability to support it. I would hope if this passes, the design work would be strictly limited to needs-based design. Who would decide what the needs were is open to question, but I would hope that this would be a very focused area of design. A larger issue I have is, given a huge commitment to the police station and fire substation, is this good timing for beginning a new major building? So either the building needs to be small in scope or put off a few years would be my idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone who can speak to the process anticipated for the design for the Public Works building? I see Mr. Vlasic. And I'm going to have the Chair of the Select Board speak.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Before Mr. Vlasic speaks, I just want to remind folks that this is a different warrant article than you've seen in the past in terms of the size and the scope. This is addressing strictly the facility garage. The facility garage, and I agree and respect Dr. Rowan's statement. However, in terms of the timing, this is way overdue. It's the garage, I believe, was built in 1969, and for years now, it's needed to be replaced. It's a matter at this point of safety and concern of our personnel, first and foremost, and also our equipment. And I'll let Mr. Vlasic talk to the details, but this is something that really cannot wait any longer. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vlasic?
This project in the development stages, we're still in the development stages, but it's been around for a little while. We started in FY 19 and 20 with an architect that did very similar type work that you heard from the police and fire department, with interviewing the department and finding out the space needs that's required for that. Also, at the end of FY 20, a concept plan of a potential floor layout was done. And this report is on the town website, and the architect is Mike Lassell. In FY 21, the town obtained the parcel that's right next to the existing facility off of Newfields Road. And that has the potential of additional structures that could be put on that parcel. And with that, there was also a survey of the property with the wetlands delineated from there. What this warrant article does is take it to the next step. How could that parcel that's right next to the existing facility be used? How is the site layout for if there was an additional structure on there? How would that work within the existing facility? And then, most importantly, is also how will it work with the fueling tanks? Because part of the fueling island, I should say, because the fueling island it is going to be needing some repairs and some adjustments coming up, and we want to make sure that that's appropriately sited too, knowing that a facility will be down the road a little bit. And then lastly with this project also is while DPW put their heads together and tried to figure out what the space needs would be into the future, the Facilities Committee also recommended that a company come in and do a comprehensive review of what our staffing needs and what our activities are in relationship to this project. So that's part of the 50,000. And then lastly, after the project is sited, we'll also come up with some estimated site costs and building costs. So right now, there's been no dollar figure put to either the structure or to the site, and this will give more information for an option as we move forward with determining what needs to happen at DPW.
Thank you. Yes.
Eileen Flockhart, 7 Jacks Court. After listening to the investments that we're making in equipment and vehicles for everything that the town does in public works, and we hear that it's not good for these vehicles to all be out in the cold and the snow and the wet and a town garage that we needed a couple of years ago sounds like a no-brainer, and I think I'm strongly in favor of it, and I urge everyone to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions or comments on Article 20? Seeing none, the article will appear on the ballot without changes. Article 21. Downtown parking, pedestrian, and traffic analysis, $50,000. To see if the town will raise and appropriate through special warrant article the sum of $50,000 for the purpose of conducting a traffic and pedestrian analysis in the downtown area to include a portion of Front Street, Water Street, String Bridge, Franklin Street, Bow Street, Chestnut Street, Center Street, and other streets in the general downtown area. This sum to come from unassigned fund balance. Estimated tax impact none, no amount to be raised by taxation. The Select Board has designated this a special warrant article. Majority vote required, recommended by the Select Board 4-0. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this article? Seeing none, the article will appear on the ballot without changes. Article 22, Conservation Fund, $50,000. To see if the town will raise and appropriate through special warrant article the sum of $50,000 to be added to the Conservation Fund established pursuant to RSA 36-A:5. These funds will be used for purposes consistent with the Conservation Fund, including the purchase of interests in real property to be held for conservation purposes. This sum to come from unassigned fund balance, estimated tax impact none, no amount to be raised by taxation. Majority vote required, recommended by the Select Board 4-0. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to Article 22? Seeing none, the article will appear on the ballot without changes. Article 23, appropriate to non-capital reserve fund snow and ice deficit, $50,000. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be added to the snow and ice deficit non-capital reserve fund previously established. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance. Estimated tax impact none, no amount to be raised by taxation. Majority vote required, recommended by the Select Board. Does anyone wish to speak to this article? Seeing none, this article will appear on the ballot without changes. Article 24, Fire Inspector Vehicle, $49,313. To see if the town will raise and appropriate through special warrant article the sum of $49,313 for the purposes of purchasing and equipping a replacement for fire department inspector vehicle. This purchase would replace a 2012 Jeep Patriot with a hybrid Ford Explorer. The vehicle will be used for incident command. This sum to come from unassigned fund balance, estimated tax impact none, no amount to be raised by taxation. Majority vote required, recommended by the Select Board 4-0. Does anyone wish to speak or ask questions about this article? Seeing none, it will appear on the ballot as written. Article 25, ADA Capital Reserve Fund and Study, $25,000, to see if the town will vote to establish a non-capital reserve fund under RSA 31-1-c for the purpose of implementing the town's ADA transition plan under the jurisdiction of the code enforcement officer, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 to be placed in this fund. And further, the select board shall be named agents of the fund and be authorized to make expenditures from the fund. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance, estimated tax impact none, no amount to be raised by taxes. Majority vote required, recommended by the select board 4-0, and I see someone at the microphone.
It's me again, Darius Thompson, 15 Drinkwater Road. Only question is $25,000 enough?
Is there someone on the board? Ms. Gilman, did you want to speak to that? Or the chair? Thank you.
Mr. Thompson, the short answer is no, but this is a start. We had the ADA study done townwide. We have a number of things that we need to address, and this is going to be the start of it. I think like with other warrant articles, you could say that you could always use more money, but the short answer is no when you look at what we need to accomplish, but this will be a start, and I'm sure we'll be back next year asking for more.
And would that, if you come back next year, would it be the same asking for the unassigned fund balance to be using for that if there's no tax impact?
We'll answer that question next year.
So I guess the opportunity, if I wanted to make an amendment, would be to increase the amount this year. If I wanted to make an amendment.
Correct. If you wish to make an amendment, I'm going to ask you to bring it up to the front here and give it to the clerk.
Understood. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to address Article 25? Mr. Thompson, did you want to make an amendment? Okay, thank you very much. Seeing no further questions or comments, this article will appear on the ballot without change. Article 26, Town Hall Revolving Fund, $5,000, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,000 to be added to the Town Hall Revolving Fund previously established. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance, estimated tax impact none, no amount to be raised by taxation. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this article or ask a question? Yes, no, okay. Seeing none, this article will appear on the ballot without changes. Article 27, appropriate to trust fund Swayze Parkway, $3,900, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,900 to be added to the Swayze Parkway Expendable Trust Fund previously established. This sum to come from unassigned fund balance. This amount is equivalent to the amount of permit fees collected during the prior year for use of the Swayze Parkway. Estimated tax impact none, no amount to be raised by taxation. Majority vote required, recommended by the Select Board 4-0. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this article? Seeing none, it will appear on the ballot without changes. Article 28, Treasurer Appointment. To see if the town will vote to change the office of town treasurer from an elected position to an appointed position in accordance with RSA 41:26-e. Such appointment shall be made in accordance with RSA 69:17-d upon recommendation of the town manager with the approval of the select board. Such appointment shall be made in writing and shall include the compensation to be paid. If approved, the person holding the elected office shall continue to hold such office until the next annual town election following the vote. Majority vote required, recommended by the select board 4-0. Is there anyone with a question? People are vying for getting to the microphone. But first, I'm going to ask the finance director come and speak. So, Finance Director Corey Stevens.
Are you speaking first or me?
Corey, why don't you speak first? I'm giving you first dibs.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good morning, everyone. Corey Stevens, Finance Director, 35 J.D. Hill Avenue. Assumed the position of Finance Director last April, for those of you who I haven't met before. Our current structure with our treasurer is that it's an elected position, as you see, and we're proposing to move it to appointed. Currently, the position is held by resident Sue Penny, who I see right in front of Mr. Childs here. And we're very fortunate, in my opinion, to have Sue as our treasurer at the moment. She has experience in public sector as well as a wealth of knowledge in the treasurer role. And as well, she works very well with my team. So three important components to me. The treasurer is an important position in our finance department. She takes part in weekly, monthly operational processes, such as approving accounts payable, getting involved with our bank reconciliations, and she's a check for those of us in finance on how we're doing. She also helps me with cash management and cash management strategies. So suffice it to say, she's deeply involved with what we do in finance. As I've sort of moved into the position of finance director and become familiar with the roles and the functions that everyone's playing within the department, it struck me that having a treasurer that was an elected position left it up to, for lack of a better word, chance on the next one that comes along, and that we may be better served as a town to ensure consistency and continuity of service if we get a chance to vet who is interested in being in the position. Therefore, if we were to move it to a position where the select board and the town manager were able to meet and vet the person who is interested, that might serve us better and ensure that we have some continuity of service with future town treasurers.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Did you want to ask a question?
No, I think you answered it. I'm concerned that I broke Darius's streak.
Ooh, okay. Do we have any other questions or comments on that? Okay, Mr. Thompson.
This is just a comment. Darius Thompson, 15 Drinkwater Road. I have had the pleasure of working with Sue many years in my capacity as working with and supporting the Exeter Holiday Parade for over 18 years, and I have found Sue to be one of the best treasurers that we could ever have had, and I just want to say thank you. I hope that it continues. I hope that this approves, and that you should definitely get compensated for what you're doing, because we value your service and you. So thank you.
Very nice, thank you. Oh, round of applause. Very good. Anyone else wishing to speak to the question on Article 28, Treasurer Appointment? Seeing none, that article will appear on the ballot without changes. The next article is 29, CATV Fund Amendment. Shall the town amend the Cable Access Revolving Fund established pursuant to RSA 31:95-h by Article 37 of the 2010 town warrant as follows? Revenues received from cable franchise fees will be deposited into the fund in an amount determined by the town manager or governing body annually, and the money in the fund shall be allowed to accumulate from year to year and shall not be considered part of the town's general fund unreserved fund balance. The town treasurer shall have custody of all monies in the fund and shall pay out the same only upon order of the town manager or governing body, and no further approval is required from the legislative body to expend. Such funds may be expended only for the purposes for which the fund was created. Majority vote required, recommended by the Select Board, 4-0. Anyone wishing to comment or ask a question on that? Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Corey Stevens. When it rains, it pours. So essentially what we're looking to do with this article is change the split between general fund and the CATV of the franchise fees between 50-50 and making it more flexible. What we see with the CATV is we're running in a deficit the last few years. That's got to do with what it takes, the effort from a labor standpoint to pull off what CATV does, and equally important, what it takes to invest in the equipment and what we need to run it long term. The IT director, in collaboration with the gentleman, Mr. Glowacki, who run the department, have taken a hard look at what's going to be coming down the pike for expenses, and we will need to renew and refresh our equipment over time, and that's going to take a commitment within the fund. So the question is, do we value what CATV brings to the town? Shows like, or presentations like this, the recordings, select board and any other board that is on throughout the week, and the other content that's provided. And if we do value it, do we also agree that having the fund whole, and that general fund doesn't need to shore it up, is important as well? If we agree with that, then I think the right move is to allow the town manager, in conjunction with the select board, to have greater flexibility in how much gets put into CATV on a yearly basis, so that we shore it up and we plan for the future. So it's merely a change in that allocation and to give some flexibility here.
Thank you very much. Were there any questions about this article? Seeing none, it will appear on the ballot without change. Article 30, readopt veterans credit. Shall the town readopt the optional veterans tax credit in accordance with RSA 72:28, Roman 2 for an annual tax credit on residential property of $500? A majority vote required, recommended by the select board 4-0. Are there any questions or comments on this? Seeing none, this article will appear on the ballot without change. We're now moving into the first of our two petition warrant articles. So I will read the article, and then I will recognize Mr. Dwayne Staples as the petitioner to speak to it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Brief point of order or clarification. Thank you, Madam Moderator. Am I reading your rules of the road for this meeting correctly, that none of the previous articles can be amended retroactively?
No.
Can I then make a motion to limit reconsideration of all the preceding warrant articles, or is that necessary?
If there's a second, I'm sorry, is that a second? Yes. From Mr. Thompson? Okay.
And
so,
just for
Mr.
clarification,
Swan?
Anthony Swan, 7 Marlborough Street.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Swan. So there is a motion to restrict reconsideration of all of the preceding articles, which is 1 through 30. The rules for reconsideration are somewhat complicated. So if there is a vote in favor of reconsideration, then there will be no further reconsideration of that article at this meeting, although there could be we seem to be having some banging going on in our HVAC. I'm not sure exactly what that is. There could be a subsequent motion for reconsideration to change that, but that would have to occur at an adjourned session of this deliberative session at least 7 days from now. So this would restrict reconsideration of those previous articles. We have a motion and a second. Is there any debate on this motion to restrict reconsideration? Seeing none, we will vote. All in favor of voting to restrict reconsideration, please say aye and hold up your cards nice and high. Aye. Looks like the majority. All opposed, say nay and hold up your cards, please. I see none. That's wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay. So back to the petition warrant article number 31. Shall the town vote on the petition of Dwayne Staples and other registered voters of the town of Exeter, New Hampshire, to see if the town will vote to authorize and direct the Exeter Select Board to keep the roadway in Swayze Parkway completely open to motorized pleasure vehicles, with travel being in a one-way direction as it currently exists. This will keep the Swayze Parkway as an area that can be fully accessed by all without creating hardships for those with mobility issues, allow motorized vehicles in the roadway, so that we may still be able to keep and enjoy the farmers market that has been a tradition in the parkway for many years, and will also allow motorized vehicles to be able to use the roadway for events and pavilion concerts. This will allow the roadway in Swayze Parkway to be closed for events, but will ensure that the above-mentioned items will still be able to be enjoyed by all citizens in the area. Mr. Staples.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Dwayne Staples, 33 Ashbrook Road. I do have a written presentation here I would like to read. I want to present and explain the reasoning why I put forth this warrant article on the ballot. Over the past few months, I have been stopped while in the parkway and asked if I'm a trustee. After saying yes, I've been told that the individual does not agree with closing part of the roadway. When answering questions about the parkway, the conversational comments end with the individual telling me they do not agree with closing part of the roadway. I've also received emails and text messages expressing the same concern with closing part of the roadway in the parkway. I felt that if there is a chance to keep the roadway open and one-way traffic flowing, then this warrant article should be presented to the voters. I cannot say for certain if this warrant article were to pass, it would override last year's vote, as there has been no definitive answer from the state of New Hampshire to this point that I know of. I know that everyone with an opinion on this is very passionate about their personal opinion. I can tell you, past and present trustees that I have had communication with believe the roadway should remain open in accordance with what Ambrose Swayze put in the trust agreement when giving the parkway to Exeter. Personally, I feel closing part of the roadway keeps a section of our Exeter population from enjoying using this part of the parkway as they have done in the past, along with many visitors to Exeter who will explore the parkway for the first time. The entire roadway has been open to one-way traffic for over a year, and the traffic and pedestrians have been able to coexist. It is not perfect, so there are challenges that need to be looked at and worked out. It is a safer alternative, in my opinion, than making the open end of the roadway two-way traffic again with no adequate turnaround for the traffic use. It has been said that out of the approximately 3,000 votes cast last year, approximately 63% voted in favor of closing part of the roadway. It is correct that 63% of those who voted passed this article. I checked with the town clerk's office. As of January 30th, 2023, there are 11,984 registered voters in Exeter. Using this figure and the 3,000 votes cast figure of last year's, that would mean 15.02% of the voters in Exeter decided in favor of closing part of the roadway in the parkway. For me, that is not an overwhelming number to decide such an important item. If you only come to the polls to vote on one small number of questions, I ask and urge you to come out and vote for Article 31 on the ballot. I also know that this may be splitting hairs in the wording of last year's article that was passed, but Section A states use of pedestrians, non-motorized vehicles, maintenance vehicles, and emergency vehicles. There is no mention of events that have been historically able to use this part of the roadway and still do so. In closing, to answer how the current trustees feel about the partial road closure, the current trustees feel the roadway should remain open for one-way traffic as it is presently. The current trustees support one-way traffic is fair for everyone. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Staples. Are there others that would like to speak to or ask a question about this?
Darius Thompson, 15 Drinkwater Road. I am a Swayze Park trustee, and I'm in full favor and support of having Swayze Parkway remain open one way to as stated, and fully support this article. I hope you all come out and vote. Most importantly, not on this article, but also on all articles, because this is our town, and it's our responsibility to actually be engaged and involved. And if we have 11,000 people come out and vote on this one article, that would be fantastic. But I hope you also vote on other articles as well.
Thank you. As mentioned, both by Mr. Staples and Mr. Thompson, there was a vote at previous town meeting last year that passed, and I have the town's attorney here, Mr. Walter Mitchell, to just kind of give us a summary of where we are in terms of the outcome of that vote and what steps have been taken. Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Last year, an article was put before the voters. There were roughly 2,800 people who voted on it. The article was approved to discontinue the road, subject only to getting approval from both the Charitable Trust Unit of the Attorney General's Office and the probate court. That article was approved by over 400 of your votes, and the town has invested in going forward with this project, which was delayed some by partway through the Charitable Trust Director retired, and we had to start over with a new one. But at this point in time, the AG's office has approved the proposal, has agreed that it is consistent with the statutes, and it is before the probate court at this point with just waiting for signature on a final order. The article that's before you today and will be on the ballot focuses on access for disabled people. Certainly a legitimate concern. I don't know if the gentleman who spoke this morning was the one who also raised this issue directly with the Charitable Trust Director, but someone did, and she raised that concern with the town, addressed it. The town's response at that point, the town doesn't have any final plans drawn yet, so we couldn't show anything on a design plan. But at her suggestion, the town put in its pleadings that went to the probate court a commitment to, in making this change, to address the concerns about disability access, and again, more recently, at the direction of the Attorney General's Office, the Charitable Trust Director, we have also agreed to include that in that commitment in the proposed order, and I am confident it will be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Yes.
Hi, Jay Child, 700 Place. That gives me a couple of answers, but it sounds like town legal is actually advocating for this. I think because of the delays, if we have another bite at the apple, I absolutely want to vigorously support this reconsideration and keeping Swayze Parkway open. I think that most of the concerns that were raised was primarily traffic. And there may have been there are some people from time to time who go through Swayze Parkway at an accelerated speed. We used to have a series of speed bumps, which is a separate article. We might want to see if we could put those back in again to keep the speeds on Swayze Parkway down. but I've always thought that this was a solution looking for a problem, and I would heartily ask people to come out and vote and support Article 31 to keep Swayze Parkway open.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this? Yes.
Hi, Doug Eastman, 12 Webster Avenue. Past trustee of Swayze Parkway back in the 90s for 6 years. Spent a lot of time at Swayze Parkway in the past year or so due to a leg injury and only being able to bike, and spent a lot of time down there doing it. I really think that keeping the parkway open is a good idea, in my opinion, and being able to use it, close it down when we need to close it down for special events, I just think it works really well. Riding my bike down there last summer and doing crazy repeats back and forth, there was traffic, and it was amazing how compatible and how compassionate people were, respecting people that were walking in the road. There were people walking on the sidewalks. There were kids on scooters. And when the people driving through there saw them, they either pulled over, and everybody just seemed to be so polite and recognized that everybody was using the parkway. Everybody should be able to use this parkway. I agree. And cars, are an issue. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and I am in support of keeping it open, but if not, then I think maybe we need to come to some other concessions, maybe keeping the lower part of the parkway open and closing the north end, recognizing last summer that nobody used the north end of the parkway because there are no trees. There are no shade trees, and people that come down there from nursing homes and kids from schools, and they want to have a picnic, they always use that end of the parkway. I'll call it the Water Streets end of the parkway, because that's where all the shade is, and that's where everybody congregated. And I would take pictures of a daily use there, and there was hardly ever anybody at the north end because of the fact there's no shade. So I guess I'm a little nervous, so sorry. Anyways, I'm kind of in support of this or something to that effect. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Hello again, Anthony Zwan, 7 Marlborough Street. I'm trying to catch up to Darius here. So I'm not speaking for or against this article. I have mixed feelings about it. I agree with everybody about everything on this one. This is not an either or, in my mind, this is not an either or decision. It's interesting to hear from town council. That's obviously new information, certainly to me. I didn't think that it was going to pass the muster with the AG, so that's very interesting to me. But the way that some people drive through Swayze Parkway is a problem, and in my opinion. And I think it's maybe possibly made worse by Google Maps and things of that nature, because you frequently see people cutting through as though they're on Water Street, right, which runs parallel to it. So I think people that are truly just there to enjoy the view and pass through it and park their car and have a picnic, or need to be able to park closer to where they want to sit on the park, great. But the way people drive through it now is a problem. So to say, let's keep it the way it is, personally, I'm not so thrilled about that. So I think there's a need for some improvement. I think there is a problem that's looking for a solution. I don't profess to know what that solution is, but I don't see it as an all or nothing thing. And if last year's warrant article does stand, well, if last year's warrant article is reversed, then I do hope that the Board of Trustees and the Select Board look hard at the situation as it is and improve it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pat Yasha from Chester Street. I am a frequent bicycler, walker, and driver through Swayze Park. My family has a memorial bench on the north end where, yes, it is sunnier than it is farther south. Some of those trees will be growing and there will be shade. Some of us like the sun when we go to the park. As an elder person who wants to make use of the park and the river, I support this change proposed by Article 31.
Thank you. Yes.
Hello, Tony Burke again, 108 Kingston Road. So I think I'm going to admit that I voted for the other thing, and now I'm looking at this and I think it makes sense to me. And I believe that the speed bumps might really solve the main actual issue there of people blasting through at 50, which I've seen. I do have a question, just for a request for information that I think really should have existed before we voted the last time, which is what the actual plan is for the closure thing, because I thought the language said that you wouldn't lose any green space, you wouldn't lose anything, and I don't understand how you can, and I never understood how you can turn around without losing space, or park without losing space, without which that doesn't add up. So if there is a plan or a sketch or something that somebody could propose, it would be easier to evaluate maybe the thought about whether to reverse or hasty decision, maybe. But I haven't seen such. Is there a conceptual drawing of what this would look like?
I'll ask our select board or our town manager, is there someone who can speak to, I'm not sure where we are exactly in the process.
So, Russ Dean, town manager. Roughly 4 years ago, we had a lot of people involved in looking at making a turnaround at Swayze Parkway, and we actually had a design done by T-Buck Construction at the time, and we had a lot of conversations around that. I would imagine what we're thinking about is something similar in nature for this. It's not on the website, but we can certainly make it available to people.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, Corey Stevens, 35 JD Hill Ave. I just want to echo what the previous speaker said, and Dr. Zwan as well. As someone who walks the Powderhouse Loop at least twice a day with my dog, people race through Swayze Park. So whatever the solution is, it's got to deal with the traffic issue we have there. It's not an exaggeration to say that people go through at excessive speeds. So I voted for the last amendment or the last article last year. This looks good. I completely understand that we need to give access to all populations in Exeter, but we don't need to give access to cars that go too fast through the Swayze Parkway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there someone else? Yes.
Jerry Hamill, 17 Little Pine. I'm in favor of keeping the roadway open, have been right along. I just want to make one thing clear to people. It was mentioned that this has gone through the Attorney General and has passed their muster, but you also have to look at what was presented to the Attorney General. I know what was presented at the town for the town meeting. There was a lot of things that kind of pushed towards why we should close it. All this increased traffic from years of, the highway and all this stuff. There was a lot of things that were really, to me, were very misleading. I think the trustees did a good job on getting it one way. I think that solved a lot of these traffic problems in general. I looked at the agreement that is going to the judge right now to get her approval. I saw a lot of flaws in that with the town presented it. A lot of things that really were correct. Basically, it all geared that the town was doing all this, that the town had built a parkway, that the town was acquiring the land. none of that was true. It was not done that way. I agree with a lot of the opinions that were given today, why it should be open, stay open, but one of the big ones is the farmers market and the events. This will stop. It's said explicitly in last year's vote that no motorized vehicles are to be allowed except emergency vehicles. This prohibits everybody. And it doesn't mean that the select board can say, well, we will authorize it just for these events. No, because if you're looking at the will of the people said no vehicles. So I just hope people will come out, vote to keep it open, and keep something in the town the same as it's been for years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
Renee Allen, High Street. Could somebody clarify about the farmers market?
Is there someone on the select board, attorney, town manager, who might be able to shed light on that? Thank you.
So I'm going to answer your question, but I'm also processing, Mr. Hamel, what you said. When the parkway is closed to traffic, like it was during the pandemic, when the emergency order from the governor allowed the select board the authority to close it, the farmers market eventually was still able, on their day, to enter. Permitted events were still able to have their vehicles come in. And I think, I know, Mr. Staples, you brought that up, and whether that's splitting hairs or not, I mean, ultimately, if it stays the way it is, or if it gets reversed, it gets reversed, but if it stays the way it is, if there's a permitted event, like the farmers market or an arts festival or something like that, I mean, understandably, those vehicles would still be able to come in. In terms of information coming out once this was passed in March, during select board meetings, when we've had updates from Attorney Mitchell, Mr. Dean has provided updates. As the assistant select board rep to the Swayze Park trustees, when I've gone to their meetings, when I've had an update from the town manager, the trustees have been updated. These have been done during public meetings. I'm not sure I know what you're speaking of, Mr. Hamel, in terms of inaccurate information, but I know that what was submitted by Attorney Mitchell was run by the town manager and also shared with the board. And we did have that as part of a select board meeting, sir, and you were in attendance. But Renee, to answer your question, I mean, the farmers market, it's a permitted event. It'd still be able to enter into the parkway. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Darius Thompson, 15 Drinkwater Road. It's rare in life that we get an opportunity to do something over. And the thing that we're doing today, we all have to be mindful that our future selves are looking back on this as memories of what did we do today. In this town, even in this warrant article that's, not this warrant article, but in our town ballot that's coming up, town vote, we have parking studies. We do parking studies all the time. We study this, we study that, we study this, and study that. To the best of my knowledge, someone correct me if I'm wrong, I've only been here about 23 years. I'm not aware of any study that was done to justify a recommendation to close the parkway. Where's the traffic study that's looked at that? Where's the data and information? Was there anything done to help mitigate traffic calming other than the speed bumps? I know that I also attended the meetings and recommended, why not put up Jersey barriers to make the lanes narrow if traffic's an issue? Give that a try to see other things that work versus the warrant article that was last year, it was passed to see if the town would, pursue, and the town pursued one thing. But usually when we go to do something, we always study it first. So this is an opportunity to vote to keep the roadway open, parkway open, and let's do studies on it and see if there is a better solution while still maintaining that everyone can access the park.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this?
Yeah, just one more issue, and this probably is for Attorney Mitchell about ADA compliance. I know the woman that spoke earlier talked about having her family's bench down on the, we'll call it the south end of the parkway that supposedly is going to be closed off, that their family would not be able to access this if they had a disability. I mean, sure, they can park up at the other end, they can park downtown, but it's still quite a walk to get down there. And so is there an ADA compliance issue with this, Walter? And that the Attorney General would approve this with not having access to people with disabilities? I'm just bringing this up because it's not a good thing to have it come up later on. Someone bring this to the attention of us and say, oh, geez, you guys didn't look at this? So could you answer that, please?
Attorney Mitchell.
Thank you.
I probably can't answer it to your satisfaction because the discussions that were held, as I recall it, the letter that raised this issue to the Attorney General's office and then the Director of Charitable Trust's conversations with the town weren't specifically in terms of any ADA requirement, but rather access. It was raised as access for people with mobility issues.
Correct.
But part of the inquiry, or at least part of the discussion, I can't remember if it was in the initial letter, had to do with the second part you've raised, access from the south end. And from what I was told, there is public use allowed of a parking lot that would give access to those benches or bench. It's located, I don't know how to, I think it's behind the building that used to...
At the boat ramp.
Yes, yeah, near that end.
Okay.
Thank you.
There's 2 parking spaces there for handicap accessibility. And the mobility issue of getting over to the parkway could be an issue. I guess people don't realize it until you've had a disability or something happened to you or a loved one that we take into consideration of this. So as the ADA coordinator for the town, I've been brought into a lot of things, and I know we just appropriated some money to look at ADA stuff, and we really need to do that. So I think everybody needs to keep this in mind, that the Parkway needs to be open for everybody, not just a few. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this article? Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. And I'm not speaking in favor for or against the warrant article of March 22, nor am I speaking for and against the citizens petition, but I just wanted to comment on something Mr. Thompson said. I guess you could say that there was a study done, and it was free. And we, the town of Exeter, conducted that study, you see, because when the pandemic hit in 2020, under the emergency order, the select board had the authority to close the parkway for a pretty good length of time. And since I've lived here, I don't think that had ever been done. And it was done because of the pandemic to allow folks an opportunity to get fresh air safely and to exercise. When the emergency order was lifted by the governor, the select board no longer had the authority to keep the roadway closed. However, we had the authority to make it one-way, and we did in September of '21. So I would just say to you that we had a period of a year and a half where residents saw the roadway closed entirely and saw what that was like. And then we got to see what the roadway was like open to one-way traffic. One of the reasons that a motion was made by my colleague was because over the course of time, we received voluminous amounts of emails, correspondence from folks for and against. We had select board meetings where we invited the trustees to join us, and folks came out to speak for and against. And again, I'm not here to advocate for either warrant article, but I'm here to say that as a board, we listened to everybody. And we decided that what was best, and my colleague, Selectwoman Cowan, made a motion that seemed to take everything into consideration and provide a compromise, but left it up to you, the voters. So I just wanted to, Mr. Thompson, just make that comment that it wasn't a formal study that cost $50,000, but we did it ourselves and we did it for free. And the board postured this situation to be a warrant article to go before the voters. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Staples.
Yeah, Dwayne Staples, 33 Ashbrook Road. And I said I wasn't going to get up and talk again, but I just wanted to clarify, when, you know, they've talked, it's been brought up about the ADA and the parking lot that's close to that. There is, behind the McCrail building, for those of you who don't know, it's where eyesight is, there's 2 handicap spots. There is no other handicap spots down in that part of town until you get to Tan Lane. You used to be able to go through the gates behind the Academy Boathouse. The Academy Boathouse has since locked those gates, so you don't have access from that parking lot to the parkway. So anybody that has to use a handicap spot, and you can't use those during the day because of the businesses that are there, would have to park somewhere, and it is a long walk into the parkway. I just want to make sure that people understand that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on Article 31? Seeing none, that article will appear on the ballot as written. Article 32. In this case, I'm going to read the descriptive portion of the petition warrant article and not read what's described as the full ordinance text, which is several pages long. So that's in the materials that folks can pick up if they wish to read it, or it's on the website. So the petition is, Article 32 is by petition of Chris Zigmont and others, shall the town vote to create an ordinance to limit the distribution and subsequent disposal of single-use plastics through reduction and limits on all town property. This ordinance would prohibit the distribution, selling, or giving of single-use plastic bags, single-use plastic food service containers, and single-use polystyrene containers on town property, including town buildings and parks, by anyone, including town staff, organizations, or permittees. It would give all affected parties through December 31, 2023 to use existing inventory and identify acceptable alternatives. It would provide guidance on selecting suitable alternatives. It would provide exceptions to human services and emergency services. It would provide parks and recreation, extended time to find suitable alternatives for the pool concession. It would deliver enforcement in the form of assistance for sourcing acceptable products, a written warning for a second violation, and refusal of permitting for a third violation in the case of a vendor. This ordinance would not prohibit packaging materials for food safety, such as plastic wrap for meat or perishable products, added at a local business site or processing facility. It would not prohibit single-use compostable products. It would not prohibit reusable plastic bags. It would not prohibit products where alternatives do not exist until such times as alternatives are identified. It would not prohibit individuals, staff, or citizens from using and consuming prohibited containers brought to town property for personal consumption. So that is the initial explanation, and I'll ask Mr. Zigmont to speak to this first.
And yeah, I think we do have a presentation.
Thank you.
And I'll actually use this first moment in front of all my neighbors to make an apology. This past Monday, we made a presentation to the Select Board and our neighbors, and what would have been the fourth reading of a proposed ordinance at the Select Board meeting. And some of our materials, we identified what goes into a single-use plastic water bottle that you'd buy at the store and drink from. And I became aware that some people were offended because we had indicated that obviously much of the cost of a single-use bottle goes into the bottle, not the water, that like less than 0.001% of the cost of that bottle of water is the water. The rest is petroleum products and things like that. And we did that to demonstrate, because I think a lot of people don't understand that whole supply chain. And I think some people took that as something accusatory, or that we thought they were supportive of big oil or things like that. Nothing could be further from the truth. It was more just an awareness tool so people would understand what they were investing in. So for that, I do apologize if I stepped on any toes or hurt anybody's feelings or insinuated that people were supporting something they weren't. So I apologize for that. But today we're just going to make a really brief presentation to underscore what we've put on our citizens petition, proposed ordinance to limit the distribution of single-use plastics on town property. Next slide, please. We'll breeze through these because it's 2023 and most of you probably know most of this stuff already. Plastic doesn't really recycle. It downcycles. Plastic never comes back to the same industrial value that it entered the supply chain in. So plastic water bottle might become a park bench, but eventually you're just delaying its inevitable disposal, right? Once that park bench is done, it just gets tossed and trashed. So it really only gets downcycled. 95% of what we collect at a recycling bin for what we put in waste management, 95% of that gets burned or buried because there is not much of a market for this stuff as well. Next slide, please. 88% of all plastics ever generated, going back to the 50s when consumer plastics really took off, 88% of that still exists somewhere. Right now we're putting about the equivalent of one dump truck's worth of plastic in the ocean every minute. We're doing about 300 million tons of plastic production every year. About half of that only gets used once. 8 million tons of plastic end up in our oceans every year. Next slide, please. And it doesn't really go away. In fact, it's with all of us right now in the room. Those little red dots represent microparticles of plastic you consume every week. About 1,700 in your drinking water, about 180 in shellfish. If you're like me, you like a beer, you got 10 of those every week in your beer consumption, and a little bit in your salt as well. These are microplastics that are just out in the environment you're consuming daily. Next slide, please. This slide simply recaps what we just read through, what it would do, and next, what it would not do. And so then the question simply is why? Well, we see this as an opportunity that Exeter can become a leader and be part of the solution and stop participating in the distribution and the permitting of distribution of single-use plastics. It's harming our waterways, it's in our town, and it's not healthy for our families. And I think with this, we can do better by our neighbors, and it supports the continued installation of fountains and bottle filling stations that's happening across town by encouraging the use of reusable bottles and containers. Next slide, please. There is no cost or tax related to this ordinance, so there's no cost to you for this. And the cost of not doing this ordinance we see is continued harm to our town and our waterways and the greater environment. The continued expansion of the cost of our solid waste removal, presently at about, and this is a low estimate, this is from early in the budget process this past year, $1.2 million a year, which is, in the end, your money. Nearly half of that is recycling. And so when we use less, we toss less, and then we pay less. And to put that in real terms, you know, one half of $1 million of the $500,000 is $5,000. That's real money. You know, if we actually restricted 5% of what goes into the recycling bin, that's $25,000. That's tax money that's not getting spent to haul plastics away to be burned or buried. And that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there folks who would like to speak to this article or have questions on it? I might need one of the officers to break up a brawl pretty soon.
No, if you can't have fun at a town meeting, then why have a town meeting? So, Darius Thompson, 15 Drinkwater Road, I want to say thank you for putting this together. And I'm in all favor and support of it. It's minimal impact to us, but we can make a bigger impact to our environment. We only have one planet, and we need to take care of it, so it just makes sense. Very well thought out, and really appreciate you taking the effort to spearhead this. So continue your involvement in town. Thank you.
Very good. Are there other questions or comments?
Jane Armstrong, 10 White Oak Drive. I certainly applaud this, and I would ask that the Select Board look to the future and extend this to the whole town of Exeter at some point. I was over the holidays, I was in Groton, Mass, at Shaw's grocery store, and apologized because I didn't bring my recyclable bag. And I said, but please put it in paper. And they said, oh no, we can only put it in paper because the town of Groton has voted against all single-use plastic. So I hope that that's in my future. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to this? Yes. It's a good thing he has long legs.
Corey Stevens, JD Hill Ave. Chris, can you just speak to the enforcement provision? How do you envision that working?
Thanks. The question was enforcement and how do we envision that working? You know, I think this is what I'd say. I'd characterize as more carrot than stick. You know, the Sustainability Advisory Committee, along with our sustainability planner, Krista Murphy at the Town Hall, have worked to come up with some tools to inform town residents as well as potential permittees on alternatives to single-use plastics, and also notice about the ordinance should this get passed. And the idea would be that, you know, if we're successful in March and this gets voted in, that in the first period through the rest of 2023 is to ramp up working with Communications Committee and the rest of the town communication mechanism to make sure that our residents and our town staff and potential permittees are aware of this, So they actually have, as written in the article, through 2023, December 31, to explore alternatives and use existing material. When we roll into next year, 2024, should this article pass, the first notice of awareness of violation of the ordinance would be outreach and connection with our sustainability planner to inform you of alternatives and help you source. We have an ever-expanding list of source material that's already on the town website. So different distributors and folks that sell different containers and utensils and things like that that you can use that are either compostable or non-single use. A second violation would be further assistance and counseling to try to find an alternative path for you. In the case of a continued a violation of this, specifically for permittees, people that come to different events, they would be subject to either the revocation or the non-approval of a future permit for that. Interestingly enough, I would also mention through this process in front of the select board, we did receive endorsements from the Town Arts Committee, the Parks and Rec Committee, and a pretty sizable raft of citizen support letters.
Thank you. Other questions?
Hi there, for the record, Liz Canada, Columbus Avenue. I have some questions and concerns from a policy perspective of how this is worded, so I'm hoping Mr. Zygmunt might be able to address some of those questions that I have. The first one is about the language of disposal of single-use plastics. So it reads to me, and I don't see any clarification, so please correct me if I'm wrong. That reads to me from a policy perspective that anyone on town property would not be able to dispose of single-use plastics on that town property in any capacity. So clarification on that would be helpful. The other piece, again, all of this from, when you're writing policy and ordinances, like this type of language will matter for enforcement and so forth. So that being one, and the other being able to distribute. So if I'm there on town property and I hand it to somebody else, by the reading of this, if I'm being very literal, which is policy, it seems like that would be problematic in some way. So just hoping for some clarification on that, the wording of the ordinance in that capacity.
Thank you. Do you have a response to that, Mr. Zygmunt?
I'll do my very best.
Okey doke.
The word disposal is a surprise to me too. That was not on our document that we submitted, so I don't know where the word disposal came from. Through the rest of the documents we submitted, we only talk about the distribution of single-use plastics. So it does raise an excellent question. I have no idea. When it comes to distribution, the giving or selling, I guess, we were hoping that the individual consumption or family consumption exception that was written in the usage exceptions was sufficient. If it isn't, I guess we'll have to work with town council to fortify that so that it's a little more clear, because we certainly don't want to restrict anybody coming to the park and having a picnic and you passing a cup to your child and all of a sudden you violated a policy. That's not the intent.
Doug Flockhart, 7 Jacksport.
Very good.
This article is a good kick in the pants to all of us and a source of embarrassment, it occurs to me, for our town. Why the heck does it take a warrant article to get our select board to do what they should have done already? In fact, why haven't you done it for the entire town, not just town property?
J. Childs, 7 Hunter Place. Well, I'm one of those people who could use that kick in the pants. Admittedly, I do have one. I support this article. I do have one logistical issue that I'm wondering. For example, this idea that it would not prohibit products where alternatives do not exist. I know, like, for 1 year where we have the Beer and Chili Fest, which is a huge, I think, success for the town, but it's also a huge dispenser of single-use plastics. I don't necessarily think we want to chill vendors and people who are providing products, food trucks that come to Swayze Park events, that type of thing. What is the strategy maybe for helping those vendors themselves figure out a way so that we don't have a beer and chili fest where we don't have any way to distribute the beer, God forbid?
So just as a point of observation, I haven't been there for a while. The last time I was there, they gave out glasses and people wore them around their necks on a halter. I don't know if they continue to use glasses or whether they've moved to plastic.
Excellent. And we absolutely in no way want to restrict the free flow of beer by any stretch. So not part of the warrant. From what I understand, and I had to be out of town this past year during the Beer and Chili Fest, but I understand it was an entirely zero waste event in that we used completely, all vendors used compostable or reusable products, and it was completely managed in that respect. So that, and actually we're kind of holding that up as a model for events to come. For new permittees or new events or well-worn ones that are not yet at that spot. The intent is exactly to notify in advance frequently and continue to drive them to our resource list. And to be frank, many of our retailers in town that are not governed by this permit because presently we're not allowed to by state law to kind of manage this outside of our town property. But many of our retailers have stepped up and they're already doing this for their own businesses and have also come forward and offered their full resource of sourcing to any vendor that wants. So we've been really lucky to have the cooperation of many retailers in town, and we're forwarding their resource list as well. So,
thank you. Selectwoman Gilman?
Thank you. I just wanted to give some feedback on a couple of questions that have come up. One is that the word disposal is used in the description of what's been proposed, and I understand the policy that it's not further defined in it, but it is the object of to not use and not dispose within the town property. Now, the reason that we haven't done this as a full town-wide issue is because by state law, we cannot. New Hampshire is a Dillon's rule state, which is not a home rule state. A home rule state lets every town make any rules about anything. But we're a Dillon's rule state, so we can only do what the state provides us to do. So at most, we can make a selectman's policy or ordinance for town property only, just to be clear on that. And was there one more thing? Oh, and we have been working on this for 2 years. In fact, we have a committee to work on this. So to say that we haven't done anything, I think is not giving us any credit. And thank you.
Okay, so I think one thing to just clarify, and council may be able to confirm if I'm correct on this, but if this petition warrant article is passed by the voters, unless it is unlawful on its face, I believe it becomes an ordinance. And if there are difficulties with the ordinance itself, it would need to go through the process of, ordinance amendment at the town level. Council, am I correct on this? Okay. So in terms of like doing it now and fixing it later, there is a process to, revise town ordinances, but this would be adopted as it's written unless it's amended, if the voters adopt it, unless it's amended at this meeting. Anyone else with questions or comments? Okay, goodness. It appears that we are at the end of our work here. Article 33. Yes. Does anyone want to transact any other business that may legally come before this meeting? Article 2, pardon me? Right. Honestly, that's just window dressing. It's not legal, but yes, that article will not. We're not quite there yet. I want to thank a few people for everything they've done. But the last thing we had was to transact any business. There's also the zoning article. Does anyone want to bring up zoning article 1 that was at the beginning? Are you approaching the microphone or heading for the exit? Looks like you're fleeing. Okay, good. All right. So I wanted to thank Rusty Lister, the Director of Facilities here, and the SAU administration for allowing us to use this beautiful building. Thank you for the crew who is here, who got the place ready. Thank you for the TV crew and the auditorium crew. You've done a great job here. Thank you for the select board, all our folks who showed up today to explain articles, all the town department heads, our manager. Thanks to all the folks who showed up to vote, and drive safely, stay warm. We hope to see you on voting day, March 14th at the Talbot Gym. And now I will entertain a motion to dissolve the meeting. All right, I hear Darius Thompson makes a motion. Is there a second? And a second is from Dwayne Staples. Thank you so much, sir. All in favor, say aye and raise your cards. Aye. Now please return your beautiful cards to the supervisors. Thank you, everybody.